Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to
Morning.
everyone. Today is March the 31st, 2021. I'm Cody Vest, the Executive Director for Private Protective Services, and I am going to call the roll for the committee, for the Certified Trainer Committee meeting. Curtis Brown,
Here.
Dustin Madison.
Here.
I think I heard it here.
He
I
is.
heard him.
Yeah, I heard him. Jack Bird. Leroy Ferris.
Here.
Frank Gaddis.
Here.
Blaze Lane.
Here.
Angel Rodriguez.
Here.
Write this down. Hold on just a second. Bird didn't answer. Gregory Donald. All right. January Farrell.
Here.
And Frankie Lax.
Here.
All right. Let the record.
Donald just came on.
Oh, Donald Gregory, are you here?
He's there. He's just.
All right, Mr. Gregory, would you mind saying that you're with us this morning?
Mr. Gregory, you're muted. Not sure he can hear it.
It looks like he's muted. Okay. Well, let the record show we do see that he's on the system with us, so I'm going to mark him as being here. The only one that I see that is not present is Jack Bird. All right. Well, welcome to everybody. Hope everybody is having a good day so far with this weather and everything that we've had. Or we are having, I should say. First thing I'm going to do is turn to our staff attorney, Associate General Counsel, Jesse Gentry, to read the statement of necessities, please.
All right, thank you. Good morning. This is the regularly scheduled meeting for the Tennessee Private Protective Services Program Committee, which is taking place via video conferencing means pursuant to Governor Lee's Executive Order number 16 and extended by Executive Orders number 65 and 78. The meeting remotely is considered a reasonable measure to protect the safety and welfare of Tennesseans while ensuring government business may continue in a manner that is open and accessible to the public. All votes by the committee will be by roll call. Notice of the meeting date, time, location, and agenda has been noticed on the program's website since March 24th, 2021. Pursuant to Tennessee Code Annotated Section 844 108B2, if a physical quorum is not present at the physical location of a meeting of a governing body, and in order for a quorum of members of the governing body to participate in the meeting by remote means, it may be acceptable if a necessity exists and a statement of necessity is read into the record. The determination must include a recitation of the facts and circumstances for which it is based. A necessity is determined by matters to be determined by the governing body that require timely action, a physical quorum not being practical within the time requiring action, and that participation of the quorum of the members by electronic means is necessary. Based on the COVID-19 pandemic, a necessity exists that requires meeting by remote means. The purpose of today's meeting is to discuss the meeting agenda, which was previously posted to the program's website, and voting will be done by roll call. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gentry. I do apologize. I did go out of order there because I already did the roll call. So I need to have a motion to approve our agenda for today.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Who
Second.
was that? Wait, hold on just a second. You need to give me your name. Who was that made the motion?
Leroy.
Ferris. Okay. The second was made by Mr. Lax.
Yes, Frankie Lax.
All right,
Second.
thank you. Till I get used to the voices, it helps. All right, we have a motion to approve the minutes. Approve the agenda. We have a second. All in favor? Curtis Brown,
Yes.
Dustin Madison,
Yep.
Leroy Ferris,
Yay.
Frank Gaddis,
Yes.
Blaze Lane,
Yes.
Angel Rodriguez,
Yes.
Donald Gregory, January Farrell,
Yes.
Frankie Lax.
Yes.
The motion carries. Now, we did not hear from Donald Gregory. Can you send him an email, Jeff?
I sent him a text. I mean, I sent him a chat message here.
Well, I'd go ahead and send him an email.
Donald,
Okay, now,
we hear you now.
okay, I'm sorry, I had it on mute.
Okay. What
I
we were
said
doing,
yes.
no, okay, it passed. All right, now I need a motion and a second to adopt the minutes
I'll
of
make
our
that
last
motion.
meeting.
I'll make that motion to approve.
That's
I
Frankie
second it.
Lax. Frankie Lax, and I believe that was Curtis Brown.
Yes.
Yes.
Some of them, I can recognize your voices. All right. A motion was made in the second to adopt our minutes from our previous meeting. All in favor, Curtis Brown,
Yes.
Dustin Madison,
Yes.
Leroy Ferris,
Yes.
Frank Gaddis,
Yes.
Blaze Lane,
Yes.
Angel Rodriguez,
Yes.
Donald Gregory,
Yes,
January Farrell,
Yes.
Frankie Lax.
Yes.
Motion carries. Now we're going to go down, we'll start our actual meeting, which I put down there, just discussion on new training curriculum. If I'm not mistaken, Jeff had already sent out the laws and the rules for the private protective services. And yesterday he sent you out and should have sent you out a new set of another set, not a new set of rules, just in case you didn't have yours handy. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to sit here for just a little bit and we're going to look at these rules, get your opinion on those, and we're going to take one at a time. We're going to go to what we call the definitions, and that is 0780-05-02-.02. Jeff and I looked at these and didn't see where we need to make any changes to these definitions. You have a baton, chemical spray, the special event, some of you might not even know what that is, special event permit, and then your stun gun. Those are the three classifications that you add. And let me take the moment to explain. If you're an unarmed guard and you want to become an armed guard, you're not adding a classification of armed. You've got to reapply. If you're already a security guard and you want to add baton, chemical spray, and stun gun, those are the three classifications. And I'm doing this by memory, but Jeff, I think that's $25 a piece.
That's correct.
And then, of course, you have to prove that you are qualified to do it. We have any discussion on this part?
Yes, may I throw out something?
Who is this,
Blaze.
Blaze?
This is Blaze.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
under the definitions, you have stun gun
Uh-huh.
labeled as stun gun. I
Uh-huh.
would venture to, I guess, propose that we call it an electronic control device, as a stun gun and a taser, which is a patented technology, are more or less separate.
Electronic what?
An electronic control device.
All right, that's something that we will look up, Jeff. I'm making a note of that.
At other places in some of our language, we call it a taser / stun gun as well. And I don't know where that may be in the statute.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that. Thank you, Blaze. I appreciate that. Let me write that down. Any other discussion?
Blaze, do you have any other issues with the definition for stun gun, or is it just changing the actual name?
Well, stun gun and taser are two separate technologies in and of themselves. So for self-defense, which emits an electrical spark that may momentarily disable a person, it seems pretty on the nose on a sliding scale based for both of them. So it's just the terminology.
Perfect. Thank you. I just want to make sure.
Okay, we have any other discussion from our trainers that do this? Is there any,
I think he's exactly right. The taser is a brand and it's a registered trademark. And so, I mean, there are other tasers, taser and stuff like that. So I think he's correct. We probably need to get away from from the taser registered trademark.
Okay, so is everybody sort of in agreement to call it an electronic control device?
Yes.
I
Yes.
agree, Cody, I agree with that. I'm a taser instructor, and we refer to it as ECD, electronic control device.
ECD, okay.
It's just abbreviation.
Yeah, that's what's, I'm writing that down. All right, thank you, Donald. Okay, if there's no more discussion on that.
Cody, I got,
Go ahead.
I had looked at this, and I think this would be, if, once we make these changes, I think we probably might want to add a word here. This might be where we would like to define what a written exam is. That somewhere along the way that has become an issue as of late, where people are asking if I give an exam on the computer, what we say the exam has to be written. Well, I think we need to expand or at least define what we mean by written, and go ahead and put that in our rule. That way, when somebody asks that question, we will have it answered.
All right, let's go to our legal staff. Jesse?
I
there
was
a
going to
problem
say
with adding-
I would say we could actually do that at 0780-05-02, where it talks about the examination, because it just says under 1A written, and I think if we looked at the definition there, we could do, instead of having it in the actual definition section.
definitions. Uh-huh.
But instead, if we make the modification under examinations of applicants for registration cards, we could either further define it there, change it, or do what we would like to do.
So
I think that
you
makes more
propose
sense
add
to
it
do
to .09?
I do.
Okay, all right. I'll make a note
Okay.
there.
Okay, so this is going to go 0780-05-02-.09, which is under, okay, to add the definition of a written exam. Any other discussion on that? Okay. Appreciate that. Now we're going to turn the page then, and we're going to go to 0780-05-02-.03, which is sworn peace officers. I don't want to touch that myself. If you open the statute, the first thing you see is that they're exempt. Then you go back in the book and it tells you what you're supposed to be doing. We're still in discussion on that, and I believe there was some legislation on the Hill concerning this as well. So Jesse, my opinion, I think we just need to leave that alone for the time being right now.
I agree. I know we had discussed an attorney general opinion just on some clarification of interpretation, but I don't think we need to make a rule change there.
All right, good. Thank you. All right, then let's go down to the next one is 0780-05-02-.04 hospitals. I did not know that there was such a discussion concerning this, but apparently there is for the trainers here. Number one simply says that a hospital that has an armed guard has to be a proprietary security organization. I mean, that's pretty clear. You got to register with us. It's free.
Right.
I don't know why it's free. I mean, we still have to work it. We still got to get the insurance, and sometimes that is very difficult. You take like the Catholic diocese, they're self-employed, state of Tennessee, self-employed, so it means I have to get with the insurance to be. There is work that has to be done, even for me to issue a PSO. But that's what it's saying. I'm not talking about us working. I'm just talking about the rule now. In number two, may be somewhat confusing. So let's take a look at number two. If a hospital which employs only unarmed security guard officers files a notice of revocation of voluntary submission to the provisions of the Act, good grief, 6235 123B. You got that open? Can you look at that for me, Jeff? Such hospital shall remain subject to prescribed civil. Oh, you can read that for yourself. I don't know of any hospitals that I have that are not registered as PSOs with us, or they are employing a security guard company. And of course, that removes them from any responsibility. It'd all be fall on the company. What is that 6235 123B?
It just says, notwithstanding the requirements of subsection A hospital that employs only unarmed security guards or officers may voluntarily elect to submit the requirements for a proprietary security organization under this chapter and evidence the election by filing with the commissioner the notice required in subsection A. The notice is revocable by the hospital at any time upon appropriate notice of revocation. So it's basically that same thing written over there in the rule.
Yeah.
And Jesse, I would turn to you on this. I would think that there was probably something historically that happened with a hospital that was unpleasant
I never did get
to
you.
somebody somewhere. And so this statute got, came about and that part was added to the rule for whatever the reason, but it's just kind of confusing. I have a lot of certified trainers call me and say, what exactly does that mean? And I just tell them if they got armed guards, which all of them but some of them I think have some unarmed guards,
Yes,
but
they
most
do.
of them do have armed guards. And in that case, they have to be a PSO, which kind of reverts back to the first part. So I don't know if you have any
Yeah. Any
more to
discussion on
add to
that,
that.
trainers? Has this been a problem for you?
This is Angel Rodriguez. I'd like to bring up something that I thought was kind of contradictory. If you look at 6235 103 15 part 3,
Yes, it's
It's-
there too.
it says it is the desire of the General Assembly that unarmed proprietary security guard officers whose primary duties involve contact with the public should have training in these areas, legal powers and limitations of emergency procedures as deemed necessary by their employers. That also contradicts that we're not supposed to be doing anything that is site specific in nature. That's also in the code. I don't have that brought up at the moment, but it seems to be a contradiction between the PSO and a hospital and what we're teaching as general.
Okay, that's always been something that I wanted to talk about as a PSO guard. I believe that's going to require a statute change. We're putting an unarmed or yeah, I'm gonna say unarmed guard out here with 4 hours of general training, and he's at individuals on a post. You tell me you're a PSO, I give you the certification, and then you hire Johnny over there, and you send me a letter that says I'm gonna train Johnny the way I want to train Johnny, and he's an unarmed security guard, and I give him a card. I have always said that PSO guard needs to be trained just like an unarmed security officer, the 4 hours of general. So I will talk with Jesse about that. That's going to probably take a law change there too, probably. But what we're attempting to do here is to put security guards on the street, on the post, where everybody has had the same training. We don't need to, in my opinion now, takes an individual who's a PSO security officer and say, okay, that's the reason. If some of you have talked to us about this, whenever we have a PSO security guard, it is stamped on his card PSO. There's a reason for that. That's the only type of organization that individual can work for. If he comes over and wants to go to work for a licensed guard company, that individual must reapply because he has to go through the training and get another card. But that doesn't even make sense.
Respectfully, Commissioner, I'd also add to this, some of the PSOs, I was a PSO for 9 years for an insurance company, and a PSO for an insurance company versus a PSO for a hospital are two completely separate and different things. I would argue and present to the committee that one of the most dangerous places outside of a war zone is probably going to be in an emergency room of a hospital, and why they would not receive the same level of training as all the rest of the security officers just baffles me.
Okay, so I'm gonna make a notation here to discuss with attorney.
He is absolutely correct. Couldn't have been
Angel,
said any
what-
better.
Okay.
Angel, what was the section that you quoted there just a minute ago? The TCA?
Tennessee Code 6235-103, which is under exemptions from chapter provisions, and it's section 15 and 3.
15, number 3. Okay, we'll take a look at that.
And
Thank-
there's also a little blurb
Angel, do you
about it
mean,
in,
I think it's 8,
I beg
an
your pardon,
unarmed
that's-
employee, whether, I think it's
Yeah.
section 8, an unarmed employee, whether uniformed or non-uniformed, in the scope of employment of a hospital.
All right. So we got it. Looks like we've got it a couple of places.
yeah, and
that we're
I
gonna
had
need.
found that one too. That's what led me to believe that there'd been something that happened historically that created some kind of issue because it got peppered in here in several places.
All right. So I'm gonna ask certified trainers, do you agree with me that a PSO guard needs to be trained the same way as any other unarmed guard that's going to be working for a contract security company?
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah, this is Blaze. I'm 100% on board with both Angel and your sentiment. They absolutely should be trained accordingly.
Yeah, Cody, this is Don Gregory. Let
Uh-huh.
me just chime in. I agree as well.
All right. Okay. Let me ask you, does anybody out there disagree or have a different viewpoint of this that we need to discuss? All right. Not seeing any. I've got that on my pad for the further discussion. All right. We'll move on to the next one then. The next one is 0780-05-02-.05 fingerprinting. We need to work on this a little bit. We will in-house work on this because you're not submitting, no one is submitting fingerprint cards to us anymore. That was dictated by the FBI to the TBI and then to all their agencies that have an ORI number, which we do in order to run the backgrounds. Every one of our professions has to have their separate ORI number, so we are subject to the TBI's dictation as well. So I'm going to pass over that because we all know we have to send these individuals to, right now it's Morpho Trust or Ademia, how would you pronounce that, and have their prints done. They don't pay the state. They actually pay the company for doing that. So we know some of this needs to be cleaned up now, and we will work on this section. Unless, does anybody have any discussion on that? Or -05-02-05. Okay, discussion. All right. That's pretty self-explanatory there. The next one we're going to go to is 0780-05-02-.06, and that is insurance requirements. Of course, this insurance requirement is for companies. I don't think it says in there that a contract security company shall furnish it. It says the PSO has to furnish it. You go back to the statute, tells you how much. I believe it's 400,000. Whether that's enough or not, I don't know. But we do get the insurance forms in. There are very few, from I understand, insurance companies that are going to write for contract security companies or PSOs. And every time I get the telephone call about starting my company and I need to get insurance, one of the first things I ask is, are you going to be employing police officers or any off-duty officers? Or are you going to have armed guards? Well, that changes that insurance policy altogether. It is extremely expensive, but that's perhaps the cost of doing business. I don't think we need to touch that section, Jesse, unless you see something there that we need to look at later. I think we'll just, that's for the contract security companies and PSOs.
Do any of you contract security company owners ever have any issues there that the rule doesn't pretty much take care of for you?
No,
I
I've
really-
not had any problems.
Okay. Good. All right, we'll move on. Let me put down here discussion here. I'm writing on this pad here. All right, the next one is 0780-05-02-.07 applicants for licenses. Okay. Let's look at this. An applicant who seeks to qualify for a contract security license on the basis of experience, a must suitable documentation. Okay. I don't have any discussion. I don't see any discussion about that particular part. What we need to look at is number 2, which is examination. I didn't see that. It came up so quick on my screen. She wants me to do something. Number 2. A is fine. Look at B. This is, if I'm not mistaken, in the statute as well. So if we try to make any changes, we'd have to make changes to the actual statute. It tells us what we need to do, general duties, fields no taking, emergency procedure. That's how we got the suggested curriculum and what to teach on the suggested curriculum, if I'm not mistaken. All right, hold on to payment examination. Okay, the only people that are taking this type of actual examination is going to be the qualifying agent for the company, correct?
Yeah.
So this is what we tell right now. PSI is the company that we use for all of our exams. We have set down. I'll just let you know ahead of time. We're going to be working pretty soon with PSI to look at all the exams again. We've had some questions come up about the test material. So if you have any particular test material that you need, would like to let me know or Jeff know about, we really appreciate it because we're always looking for books. I think one of them is how to run a small business or how to run a business, or it's been a while since I've looked at that to know what's on the actual exam there. But we're always looking for material for the to put on the exam.
Miss Cody, I was involved in updating the examination for the contract security company and the registered. I mean, that was done not long ago, was it not?
When you say not long ago, that was a good, the contract runs for 5 years. That was over 5 years ago, Frankie.
Oh my
Believe it or
God.
not. Oh
Really?
yeah. Uh-huh.
Time flies when you're having fun.
It's
my God.
probably closer to 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, I'll be quiet.
No, that's fine. That's something I'm sure everybody didn't know. When we go into a contract, it's a 5-year contract. Sometimes the contract looks good. I don't have any questions. I don't have anybody contesting the exam. Everything's running smooth. We'll try to do an extension on it. But we've already done an extension on the exam, so therefore I know it's been more than 5 years. And we will have to sit down with PSI and redo this again. So we will be asking for some more volunteers or experts in the field to help us do this. And this is not a fast process either. Frankie can tell you. Is that where we went and met at the motel?
No, it
The
was
conference room, or
actually, no, it was actually
online?
well, it was online, but we
Yeah.
didn't have the Zoom, but we had the audio. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, that's how long ago. That first contract is where we went to. I don't remember. Maybe it was a Holiday Inn or one of those. We had the big conference room, and we brought in the PIs and the alarms, and the contract security companies and certified trainers at that time. We sat at different tables and worked it. But what Frankie's talking about, we did try to do it over the telephone.
Yeah, but we were online and
Right.
the lady would put the slides up, but stuff like that. So yeah.
So it'll take a while. So I will be asking for volunteers for that whenever it comes, rolls back around again. All right. So is there any other discussion we need about that? I don't think so, because that's not really in your particular area. But let's move down to the registration cards. 0780-05-02-.08. Applicants for registration cards. Well, everything has changed here. So we will be taking a look at this and changing some of this. Right now, what this is you had the paper applications, and if you're still seeing paper application, that is a huge no-no. I had a very large company come to me, will come into the office just this week, pretty much demanding paper applications. Come on now. We're supposed to be doing this online. If you do it online, you supply everything. This application process runs very smoothly. If you send in a paper application, you're dragging the whole system down.
Yeah.
Well, I should be quiet because I get disturbed about that. But anyway, that's what this section was about. It just simply meant if you sent your application to us and it was postmarked, say as if it's a renewal and it was postmarked for the expiration date, which is still effective, we would go ahead and take that application as well. You used to, the application was 4 pages. You had to carry the 4 pages with you to make it a completed application so you could go to work. The guards cannot go to work until they have an application on file. So a lot of this was where you would prove to us that you had already sent the application to us. Say you put it in the mail yesterday and you needed the individual on the post tonight, whatever. If you could prove by the postmark or some kind of receipt, So we don't do that. So Jesse will be looking at that section to try to make it more smoother. Now we do it electronically. I hope the trainers are going to tell me that that is running pretty smoothly because it appears to be in our office. Yes, Donald? I think you're muted again.
Yeah, I was just indicating, yes, it's a very
Oh.
smooth process. I think it's a big improvement over us doing that paper.
Okay, good. Thank you. I'm hoping everybody's feels that same way. Yeah, you had to keep now let's go to C says keep a copy while on you. Now it's just the computer printout and then the part to where you paid the fee. So there's
The
2 pieces.
online payment
Online,
summary
yeah.
and the application summary has basically taken the place of all the active application and proof. Basically, that's the proof now that you have applied and paid the fee. That's the online payment summary and the application summary.
Okay. Now look at E that just talks about that PSO guard again in there that sends us a letter from attesting to the employment of the applicant. And most of them that's what to say. Whomever is hired with us and he started the July the 5th. And then he goes out there and he's a security guard and he has no training. But anyway, we've already discussed that. Okay, no individual. 2 says no individual shall act as an armed security officer for obtaining an armed guard. We know that. If you're an unarmed guard, you cannot work an armed post. Everybody knows that. But if you are this is a big problem we have with some of these companies. If you are an armed guard, you may work unarmed or armed post. These companies are making these individuals who are armed come in and get an unarmed card.
Yeah.
I mean, I do make some of those courtesy calls and say, wait a minute now, that's not the way it's supposed to go. So what's happening is they're charging that guard that $150 state fee, as they call it, again. So I do look at that whenever I get a telephone call. But at all trainers, if they're coming to you and they're armed, or your company owners or whatever, they may work an unarmed post with an armed guard card. They don't need the unarmed guard and the armed guard. That's charging the individual twice for that.
Mhm.
Another thing I'd like to point out here that I have a lot of question about, that armed guard cannot work an armed post and be armed with that online payment summary and the application summary. They can't work the armed post. That's another thing that has come up before. They're not supposed to strap on that pistol and work that armed post until they have their credentials from us approved and in hand. So that question comes up sometimes too. So
So what you're saying is that they can work an unarmed, they made an application to be an armed guard. So they're going to have the summary sheet and they're going to have the payment sheet. They can work an unarmed post tonight,
That's correct.
not
That's
an
the way
armed
it's always,
post.
that's the way it's always been.
That's correct. That's why we're going over this. Now, thank you, Curtis. That's where it's always been. But you'll be, well, you won't be surprised calls that we get. So, all right. There's no other questions about that one. We'll just move on to the next one then. That is, I got a little feedback there for some reason. 0780-05-02-.09, examination of applicant for registration card. And that's what we're doing now. Hold on just a second. Oh, good. Thank you so much. Oh, thank you.
You gonna tell them?
No, that's the other print. Yeah, there's
you
things
gonna tell
going on in the
them.
background. I'm sorry, folks. Yeah, as you know, what we have to do, this is a good spot because this is a registration card. We get the application in, we process it, we push the button, and it's approved. Okay, then we get a report of all the certificates that have approved last night, and they come in from another area, and we rip off the little card. It's two parts. We rip off the little card in the corner, and the rest of it is the wall certificate. Why a guard needs a wall certificate, I have not figured that part out yet, because that's just an additional fee. All right, so we got the little card. We have to have a printer, a color printer, which ours died, so that's what he was talking about. The new printer for us had come in. And we do so many licenses, we just can't afford to have a printer down, a color printer down. So we got the card. Somebody sits there literally on the computer, finds that person's file where we put the photo. They print that off. We're on the 9th floor. It prints off now on the 11th floor. So we do a few of them at a time. We go up there and we get those. We bring them back. Well, if you haven't cropped it just right, it has to be cropped again, has to be cut to fit the little ID card, the little space that it goes on. We take two-sided tape and we tape the little picture to the little card, and then we put it in a laminating pouch. Then we run it through the laminator. Now that's for all our professions except for unarmed guards. That's still arms, that's locksmiths, that's PIs, that's everybody that gets the photos. Well, what the gentleman just walked in, Michael Flowers, who's the director up there, IT, the little printer that we're using right now for the pictures, has just a new one has come in, and he's going to go down there and get it set up for us, which we appreciate. But we're going to be doing something brand new. We have new printers that are setting up upstairs in IT right now. We are waiting for them to write a different program. We're not going to have to do that two-sided tape and all that laminate, all that. The card, it'll be a silver card. It has a hologram, I believe it's called. It's a state seal on it. We'll just be pushing a button that says connect this Mary Jane to Mary Jane on this side, this program, and it's going to push out the card. The card is not going to look like it does now. That little green looking card that's laminated doesn't, in my opinion, is not very professional looking, but it's what I had to deal with. Everybody does. This card is actually going to, I guess, something like your driver's license in it.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's gonna look like a little
style.
credit card.
Yeah, so we are really excited about that, but there's still a lot of work that has to be done in the background. They told me what do you say, May? Maybe may have a roll out, excuse me. So I just want to let you know, we're discussing now, and I'll get with Jesse later. Everybody gets a photo ID except for the unarmed guards.
Is that May of this year?
Yes.
Good question, Donald. That's
Those
the plan.
Hey, I've been planning this for 20 years. Everybody gets tired of hearing me say that. But if you've been around, you know I have beat that little dog to death. And Michael said, now you're not going to retire. I had a conversation with Michael Flowers one day and I said, boy, whenever I get this photo IDs done, I am leaving. I am going to retire. That's the first thing he said when he walked in. Just because we got this little card doesn't mean you can retire yet. So I'm trying, gentlemen, ladies, I'm trying to bring this up and get these cards done professionally looking, and it looks good. It's some work. Jesse, I need to get with you about that as well, because now I never really thought about it. I can just put the profession on the front and the picture on the front, the person's name, say armed guard, and all the writing can be put on the back. Because they don't really want to, according to Michael, cover up that state seal too much, and this writing will. So we'll get together on that. So there's some more work on that. I'll have
I
to.
think I might ask, if this new system is gonna be a lot easier, is there a reason we wouldn't put a picture on the unarmed guard's license?
That's a discussion I'm going to have with upper management. Your statute doesn't even say I have to laminate a card. That was done when Mr. Spurlock was the director back in the 80s. And I have over the years tried to do away with the photo ID, but the companies have not been receptive to that. So we've stayed with the picture. And yes, sir, I was talking with Michael this morning about maybe looking at the unarmed, but that is my biggest profession, that and my alarm employees. So when I might laminate 46 armed guards, I'm going to laminate 200 unarmed guards.
We got about 40,000 unarmed guards in the state, I think.
So, but we're going to look at that, and I'll get Jesse. That's another thing for you and I to take a look at. I'm not in a position where I can ask for a new employee, but if it's going to save us time, we hope, and we don't exactly know how much is going to be saved until we actually get it completed. But yes, to answer your question, we have looked into having them photo ID too. I think that would, I'm in favor of that if I can get it done.
So Cody, they're
7:30.
already submitting a photo with their application for unarmed. Is that correct? Because I know they do
Yes,
it for armed.
yes.
Yes, that is correct.
For unarmed.
Every profession that we regulate
Right.
has
Except,
a photo.
except
So
the
it should just
certified
be a
trainers.
matter.
Oh yeah, I take that back. You individuals are different, and I don't understand
I'd say it
that. So
should
I'm
just
gonna
be an
get to that. Yeah,
to
you don't
add a
get a
card.
laminated card, and I want to know why you don't have to be fingerprinted. When somebody makes a application to be a certified trainer, they're not even fingerprinted. Well, when you're teaching people. Years ago, Frankie might remember, some of you had been around a long time. Years ago, we used to do that, but the FBI came in and said it does not say in your statute that a certified trainer has to have a fingerprint card. So that might be something we might want to look at. That would be a law change as well. So we're going to look at that too. But we're down here to the examination of the applicants for registration card. This is the will be administered and graded by applicants and certified trainer. It says written. Is that what we were talking about?
Yeah,
Adding a
that's
definition to
that's
what
where
was
Jesse suggested that we would define what written means. That way we don't have people asking that question. Well, if I give it on the computer, is that the same thing as written? If we define it that way, then it's no longer a question, and we'll accept it as is. And I think we need to look at that.
Okay, that's great. I just didn't realize that was a question written to me. I'm sitting on the computer, still written. Somebody had to write it, but I do agree. I will look at that and maybe do
Written
that.
/ typed.
There you go.
Well, I think the concept is, when I got a master's degree, I had a written test I had to take, but I had an oral examination that I had to take too. It was like a half a day. I was sitting in front of my committee and they asked me anything possible from A to Z about biology, and I had to be able to discuss it. So there is a difference. That's why that this test was considered back a long time ago. It was considered written. And now that we have come a long way from 30 something years ago, whether or not a test given on the computer is a written exam, or it's just, it's come up and the water's been clouded a little bit with everything going toward an online and you know, a written test, and it doesn't say that it has to be proctored. That's another question. How do we make sure that somebody that takes a non-written test, how do we make sure that they're not cheating? Well, if you walk out of the room when you hand out a written test, people can still cheat if you're not there to watch them. So it's just something I think we need to kind of clear up a little bit, and then that way when people ask, we can say, well, yes, this fits the definition of a written exam. Right now, we don't really have that defined.
All right. As C says, subject to review and evaluation by the commissioner in a reasonable time upon request. That has happened several times. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, about 6 to 7 years ago, I asked all trainers to send in their training so we could review it. And here recently, last year, year before last, we
It's been
asked
2 years
2
now.
years ago, we asked everybody to send it in whenever Jeff came on board, and we reviewed it. It was a big eye opener, and that's why we're having this meeting now. Very big eye opener.
I guess my question would be, will that still need to be in there if we make this mandatory?
I think we should leave it in there, Jesse. Did you give us the authority to ask for that information?
I think, well, I think two things. I think one, we probably need to keep that in there, but I think we also, when we look at, there is a statute, I had it pulled up a minute ago, but it specifically says it's in 6235-126, under subsection B, a certified trainer may, in the trainer's discretion, instruct personally or use a combination of personal instruction, audio, or visual training aids. So I do think it is something to consider, that even if we're saying, here's the curriculum that needs to be taught, trainers would still have some leeway of how they're moving it. So I think when we're looking at then the examination, that we should be able to still request to have copies. I know we're talking about doing a standard curriculum and a standard examination, but I do think just because of that statute, we probably need to keep this part in there to look back at it. Something that I did also want to bring up, are we completely opposed to doing any type of oral exam? I know I've done a little bit of research with some of our other licensing entities for the state. And one that I thought that was interesting is the Board for Licensing Contractors has a specific provision that they will allow the board to administer an oral exam for someone who has a disability. I believe Frankie Lax had brought up a question about people who may be illiterate or may not be able to read. Would the committee be interested in doing some type of a provision like that, where someone could have an oral exam administered by the committee? Maybe, so maybe it's not administered by the trainer who did the training, but maybe it's something more standard by the committee or an appointed group of individuals. Is that something that would be up for discussion, or not something that you all would think should happen?
This is Blaze. I just want to throw out that we should probably take a look at the risk reward balance there. If part of the training curriculum does include report writing and communication, then it kind of flies in the face of everything we're trying to accomplish if we issue out an oral review.
That
There
makes
is
sense.
a discretion there.
I agree with Blaze.
I will say this, and I'm sure you all have already run into this, but when I did the Hunter Ed program statewide, we had a ton of people that have difficulty reading, and I'm sure you all have the same thing. You see people that have trouble reading, writing, and communicating, and to Blaze's credit there, it is a problem if part of your job is to observe, deter, and report, and you can't report, then you know you got a big chunk of your job that it's going to be difficult if you can't do that. So
Yeah.
I think I could still report because if I had that particular problem, being who I am, I'd probably carry me a little recorder. Something
Well,
happened. But are we stepping on any toes here by saying we cannot give out an oral exam?
it does
Jesse?
say in the rules that you cannot have any disability that would hinder the performance of your job duties. So that right there does kind of say that you should be able to read and write. And as far as reporting goes, let's not get too carried away with trying to make it 100% politically correct, all inclusive. If you've ever met me, I'm not the tallest person in the world. There's no way I'm going to be playing in the NBA. It's not because it's unfair, it's just because of my size. So I believe as a security officer, you should be able to read and write on some fundamental level because that information will have to be reported, and there are certain situations that needs to take place.
I believe we're going to have to defer to legal on that. I mean, I can see where that would cause us some heartache there.
Well, and I think that, there's some level where we haven't been doing or we haven't been doing an oral exam. So I think if we're looking to add that, it would be an expansion. I do think we're kind of looking at two issues in some ways. One, I agree, an employer is probably going to put in their responsibilities for the job or even the qualifications. If you can't read and write, we're not going to hire you. So that's a different situation than, is this testing to see if you're qualified and we know that this knowledge that you need to know. So I do think if it were going to be oral, that would probably be the way to do it, would be in front of the committee. That's why I brought that up, just to have that safeguard there. So we're not having, Tom Smith just saying, oh, I gave him an oral exam, he passed. But that was just why I brought that up. I thought that was something the committee could look at. At the very least, I do think changing the written definition to saying written as in on paper or typed or electronic, some means we can look at some wording for that. But I don't believe it's been administered orally previously, has it? We've only been doing written exams. So that would only be an expansion if we were going to entertain that idea.
I'd like to bring up this in regards to the last meeting that we had. And again, I'll echo Blaze not being an NBA player. My last name ends in Z, okay? One of the things we brought up on the last committee meeting was in regards to speaking the English language. In my mind, if we're translating it or providing an oral exam in another language, as I heard some of the trainers might have been doing, it's kind of the same issue. Or providing a translator, for instance.
Well, what would be wrong if you did provide a translator? The person comes in and sits in your class. I guess it'd be at the back of the room probably because they're going to be talking to the person sitting next to them. Has anybody experienced that?
I haven't.
So Cody, if I could offer, I've had a few situations where someone who was being hired to work in a primarily Hispanic community, and they wanted to make sure the person spoke fluent Spanish. And English was not their first language, although they spoke English fine. They had a lot of trouble reading it. And I've had requests from them, could they bring their child, and I'm talking about a 15, 16-year-old who's in high school, that could just simply read the questions to them and they would answer them. But so they spoke English fine, they understood English fine, they just didn't write it well or read it well. So I work with them on letting one of their children read the questions to them in English, or even let them read it in Spanish, because I knew they could speak English as well, but they would have to answer it.
Well, I don't see where that's any different than having an interpreter.
Well, that is what that is.
For sure.
And here's my opinion about all of this. We don't need to paint ourselves into a corner by restricting any possibility of doing things like that. But to Angel and Blaze's view, we don't need to open it wide open and just do that because I mean, if I'm going to go over here at the farmer's market and eat, and there's a bunch of armed guards over there, and they don't understand English, and I'm saying, please don't shoot, and they don't understand what that means, and they start shooting, I have a problem with that. I don't think I want to eat over there. So, we just don't need to regulate it to the point that we don't have any leeway at all. But I think we
Actually,
need to build a leeway in there to some degree.
we just need to tell him not to go out to eat. So he can stay home. Don't be going out to eat.
Well, but
You know, because your Lord knows you just might get shot. So don't go be going. We're
But I
just
think we're looking
joking
at
about that.
two things though. You know, we're looking
Yeah.
at the examination. You know, we're looking to see if you possess this knowledge to be
Mhm.
qualified to be a guard. But then there's always this other issue of the employment side of it. You know, is a CSC going to hire someone to to work as an armed guard if that person can't read and write? I think that there is some level of, you know, if you have your armed guard, you know, you've got your card, that we are signing off on them as the state of saying this person is qualified. But there's a difference between being qualified as an armed guard by knowing this information that you need to know to be in this profession versus that you are someone who's qualified to work at this post. You know, if it's someone like Mr. Gregory had mentioned, you know, if you're looking for someone who's bilingual, that's your employment qualification. You're not going to hire someone who's not bilingual. So our scope that we are trying to do with this training is to make sure that these guards possess the knowledge to be able to do this post. I think it's a great point though that Blaze and Angel, you both brought up about, you know, if you're doing written reports, if you can't interact with clients or customers, you may not possess the knowledge at that point to be an armed guard. But I do think we have to be clear that we're not making it a situation where you can't demonstrate that you actually know this. Because someone, you know, may know everything, they may know be able to, but they can't read and write as well. They can't demonstrate to pass an exam. So I think it's just something to be considerate of when we're looking at making any changes, one way or the other.
Mr. Gentry, I'd also add to the back end of that. I always look at the end too, is if a security guard does this for a good amount of time, whether they do a good job or a bad job, they're probably going to land somewhere at some point in time in a court case as a witness, as the defendant, and those reports are going to be examined at that point in time as well. So I think just like to throw that out there for consideration.
Okay,
And if
let
I
me
may
go ahead,
jump in
Blaze.
and say
Go ahead.
one last thing. When we're talking about examinations right here, and we're talking about redefining or at least further clarifying written versus written and typed and all of that, when we look at our general duties that we are asking, general duties 1 hour on report writing. So if we're going to say that report writing is not necessarily essential, if we're going to allow them to do something else, do we need to change that language there as well?
All right.
Right. That's a good point.
I've always been told my role is to take the information that you're giving to me and issue a unarmed or an armed guard registration card. Now, whether you can get employed or not is not for me to take into consideration. I'm just supposed to know about the information that you give me that you qualified to get that registration card. So that's your position. That's what you do. Now, some of you are already companies. I understand that. And then it's going to depend on, I think, each individual company. If I'm in a Hispanic area and that's my client, I want people who speak as
Right.
lost train of thought there. Or if I'm over here in the Egyptian neighborhood or what, you know, whatever. I do. That's what, but that's your hiring practices. That's not me giving you a registration card.
But they're
Or the
hiring
trainer.
based on our certification, and our certification, according to the rules, says that they are fluent. They know the knowledge for report writing, not under simply understanding how to make a report or get the information, but report writing as it states. So that's where it kind of intermingles with what we are telling them on good faith that these people are qualified to do that. They're making those hiring practices. Otherwise, they just issue the exam themselves and make that determination.
Well, who's to say the gentleman couldn't sit down and write it in Arabic, or couldn't write it in Spanish? I mean, he's going to turn it in, and whatever. I think we just hung up on that too much myself, but we'll take a look at that. So what did we decide? Did we make a decision, anything about the oral exam? Or
Cody, I didn't
yes,
mean to
January.
interrupt.
That's fine. Go ahead.
I actually had a question for you and Jesse. Now I'm playing devil's advocate here with the oral exam. If we were to not give one, would that be going against the ADA?
You mean to not give an option?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Because the way I'm sitting here looking at this, being illiterate can be perceived as a disability, and all it's going to take is one individual getting upset and getting a hold of somebody, and then it creates this whole can of worms that probably none of us want to get into.
Well, that's why I said we don't want to paint ourselves into a corner and maybe not at least entertain that option if necessary, because if we say no, heck no, then we might be faced with something like that down the road.
And I think we can look at it.
Go ahead.
Go on.
That I agree somewhat to what January is saying. We don't want to, and what you said, Jeff, we don't want to paint ourselves into a corner, but this would go back on the company itself, though, and the requirements for the company and the requirements for each post. If you give an oral, you very well may give an oral, depending on your company, depending on your geographical area. But if you have written in your guidelines that you must be able to write a fluent report, just like Blaze said, then that is a part of that individual company's requirement. Not so much as what the state requires, but what that particular company requires of its officers. And if that company deems that you're not required or you don't meet the requirements of that company, I don't see that that would be a legal issue, because that's something that the company itself is requiring, and it is said there, stated on the application and stated to that individual in the test. If once you put that out there to them, the information has been given, the rest falls back on them. It's just like me going and applying for Cody's job. If I'm not 100% qualified and meet the qualifications that the state sets down, I have no recourse in filing a complaint, because first off, I didn't meet the core value that was set down by that company.
Well, let me just say, yes, I understand that. And Curtis, I appreciate that. If you want to be considered for my job, you have to be breathing.
Oh, no.
And that's pretty much what.
Nope. No way. We'll let Blaze go.
Sometimes I feel like that's all you need to do.
Not me.
Little humor there, just a little humor. No.
Ms. Farrell, though, to your point though about the ADA, I think we'd be looking at reasonable accommodations under that, and I think that would be more of something that we would, I guess, discuss with the provider. If we are specifically saying in the statute, that there are, we're saying there's no accommodations to be made, I think there's we would have an issue. I think keeping it a little bit broad may be helpful. I don't know if we necessarily have to give a fully oral exam, but I'm thinking of someone who might have dyslexia, for example. That's someone who would have a disability where they may not be able to read as well. I think if we have the testing provider, whoever, if PSI is providing our exam for us, and we can have them help provide some accommodations. Dyslexia, for example, there are accommodations that you can make by changing the font size. So I think there are some things that can be done to meet the reasonable accommodations under the ADA without necessarily going totally to an oral exam. But I do think that is maybe a question about accommodations in terms of you're still taking the written exam, but there's someone helping to provide some reasonable accommodation. Obviously, we don't want to go too overboard with that. And I think the giving a completely oral exam, just the example I'd given with the Board for Licensing Contractors, theirs is discretionary, and I don't think they've done it. When I spoke to a couple of their board members, I don't know if any of them have ever had to do that before, but it is an option, and that's something that they've told individuals who have complained about this. Well, we can give you an oral exam, and it's in front of that entire board giving that. So I think if it was a situation where it was an oral exam, I think we'd want to put safeguards such as they would have to come before a committee like this, where it's other individuals. So we're all asking those questions to determine whether they actually possess that knowledge or not. And I do think, to Blaze's point, if we're saying you need to show that you're able to demonstrate that you can write reports, if we're saying that that's knowledge that you need to be licensed, I don't know how we would demonstrate that necessarily. I mean, we can ask all the questions about it, but I know I've reviewed plenty of poorly written reports, and we've had complaints come in that, it's, if the employer's happy with it, that's different, than if it, is legible. But I think that there's a couple different things to look at. But I think if we keep it a little bit open, we don't have to necessarily give an oral exam. We can still not have that. But I think that's something we would look at with the provider about how we would provide reasonable, again, accommodations.
Yeah, if we draw our line in the sand and dare somebody to cross it, you better look out. 'Cause somebody will meet you on your side of the line real quick when it concerns the public. And like Jesse said, we're not gonna make the person on the exam write a report. We're gonna tell them how they should write it and some of the components of that, and we're gonna ask them questions about that. But our exam is not gonna contain a portion where somebody's given a list of facts and you got to write up a paragraph of a report. It's not going to be like that. So I think, to Cody's point, I think we can certify that person or register that person that they've been trained and told how to do this, and they were able to answer those questions. I'm not real sure my 21-year-old son could write a report that you can understand, because I've helped him write some papers, and he'll bring it to me and say, "Hey, can you help me with this?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, you need help." They just don't, some people just don't do well with that. So,
Jeffrey, I was a post commissioner for 4 years. I read law enforcement reports. I mean, we have police officers out there that
Can't
can't
write.
even write reports or complete
It's true.
sentences.
right. That's
So-
exactly. I know we're going to see that.
And, and they have, 14 weeks of training, and we've got 8 I mean, there's a lot of illiterate people out there that make good security officers
Mm-hmm.
that stay awake and are responsible people, and they can do their shift reports, and that is a limited amount of writing. But if there's an incident to happen, I have supervisors that will assist them in writing a real good report that will, be sufficient for the client or even, legal situations. So that's what I do. And it may not be right, but that's what I do.
I
Frankie,
think that's
this
a
is
good point.
Yeah, Frankie, this is Blaze. I think that's an excellent point for those people. So maybe we should change the language in the general guidelines from report writing to simply report making, and then allow us to be able to administer the test that would be more on par and indicative of making a report versus a written report. I think that language would be more conducive for what we're trying to accomplish.
Or we could just call it reporting. And, that would be the act of gathering information. And I mean, a contract security company could come up with a report that's just check boxes
Yeah.
mostly. And, you could report if you had enough check boxes for that particular site, that location, that post, and a person could write an excellent report just by checking certain boxes, and then you would interpret that. So I think that's a good point. We could just change that, from report writing to just reporting, and that would sort of hint to the fact that you didn't have to sit there and write up a manuscript every time that you had something happen.
Jeffrey, I don't want to tell a lot of war stories because I don't want to extend this meeting, and I'm getting off point. But the lady brought up a good point about the ADA. When I was, and I know that handgun permit training is different from security. I get that. But I got contacted by Eckerman years ago and said, look, I want to send some sign language people to your handgun class, because we have some deaf people that want to get their handgun permits, and they're throwing this federal ADA stuff at us. Will you allow that in your class? And I said, sure. So I had a front row of deaf people and a sign language person that was doing sign language for the handgun permit class. So I mean, you get into this stuff, and it's what about that? I mean, do you have to hear to be a security guard? I mean, you open up a can of
I
worms.
introduce one thing we're talking about, kind of like, I'll say what our opinions are. There's a law, and it's 62-35-117. It talks about qualifications of the security officer. This is something that's always bothered me. In section 6, it says the applicant shall not have any disability. And this is the part that bothers me. In the opinion of the commissioner, prevents the applicant from performing his duties as a security guard. Now, if I were the commissioner, I would not like that wording. I would have some type of medical statement. I don't know what it would be, but if I were the commissioner, I would not want it to be, in my opinion, that I could disqualify someone from performing the duties. I just want to throw that in for probably more for Jesse. That's always bothered me. But anyway, I'll be quiet.
You could come in one morning because a red car cut you off on the way to work and decide that anybody that drove a red car couldn't be a security guard, couldn't you?
Well, opinions probably should not be in the law. I mean, that should be worded differently, I would think. But again, that's just me.
Good. That's a good point. That puts a tremendous load on the commissioner, in my opinion.
Okay, I think we pretty much worked on that one. My only, before we leave this, how many of you have even come across needing to give an oral exam?
1, 2.
There's January and there's Blaze.
I'm not surprised at that. I mean, you take 400 trainers across the state. I know that you're going to run into these issues that we're
Eventually.
talking about. You're going to.
The majority of folks that I've trained over the years who did not pass the written test, English was not their first language. And I'll just say that. But I haven't had a lot that didn't pass, but I've had some, and the majority of those, English was their second.
Blaze or January, what happened did someone come to you and ask to have the exam orally, or did they fail it and then ask? Just out of curiosity, how did that come about? Because I think you two had raised your hand.
For me, it was just that. Now I teach the handgun permit class, and I do notice we've had a couple people that come in speaking Arabic or speaking Spanish, and we'll let them try to take the test. They have a basic knowledge of English, but not enough to handle the verbiage that's in that test. Once they fail, then I can go back and I'll read it out to them. I do speak a little bit of Spanish, a little bit of Arabic, that I can help them, but not too much.
Bilingual as in can speak and understand, but there's a difference in speaking and reading. That's the biggest issue.
Yeah, that's the biggest issue. I don't know about Blaze's experiences.
My experiences are pretty much what you guys are talking about. English is not their first language. They fail the first exam, and I look at this pretty much black and white from the difference between handgun carry versus an armed guard, one being an exercising of your Second Amendment, one being applying for a job where you're going to get paid to, carry a gun in the safety of the public. So with this, people would, of course, fail that first exam. I would then inquire as to what the nature of the failure was, which they are all too adamant about, saying that they simply couldn't read the test. And so then we would kind of read it together, so that way I understood a baseline. I wouldn't just read it to them, but I would at least make sure that they understood what each word means, because even if you speak both languages, the English language, by and large, is incredibly confusing. We have a bunch of big words that all mean the same thing. And so there, and there. And so I would make sure that at least on some level, they were still able to comprehend the test. And that gave me the the kind of, I guess, satisfaction that I needed that they knew and understood the material.
Well, a perfect example of that, back to the Hunter Ed, I used to have people that would maybe not do well. And the first thing I'd go look for this one question every time. And it says, and I'd see that the kid missed it. And I'd say, what's the first thing you do when you get in a boat? And 100% of the time, the kid will say, well, you put on your life jacket. Well, guess what? That terminology is no longer used. You put on your PFD, your personal flotation device. But because society still calls it a life jacket, that's what that kid, so the kid knew the answer, but he couldn't find it. That answer wasn't there. So because of the terminology, and just like January was saying, you might be able to speak another language, but if you can't come up with that key word that everybody in their community calls that thing, whatever it is, then you've missed the point there. And did they know it? Yes, but because you were calling it, they thought it was black and you called it white, and you're miles apart. But so we and that's where I go back to saying we don't need to paint ourselves into a corner where we can't make some kind of amend for something like that. Now, whether, and we certainly don't want to end up with lawsuits with the ADA, and we do not want to go there, because I don't think anybody wins in that situation.
All right, I think we've talked about that. Probably going to have more discussion about that a little bit later, but let's go ahead. But the next one we're going to look at is 0780-05-02-.11.
Ms. Vest,
10.
Yes.
We need to do 10.
Oh, 10. Oh, I skipped 10. Yes,
My
is that what you're going to tell me, Angel?
no, ma'am. My apologies. If going back to 09, if you look at B,
Okay.
designed primarily to measure the applicant's knowledge of the field of security guard and patrol service, rather than the policies, procedures, or requirements associated with particular contract security company or proprietary security organization. That's the code I was referring to earlier in regards to proprietary. So just wanted to bring that up.
Oh, okay. Yes. And that's what Jeff has said all along, is that this training is not supposed to be how the company wants you to tuck your pants in, tuck your shirt in, or wear or polish your shoes, or take your break at 3 o'clock. That's exactly what that means. And thank you for bringing that up there, Angel. All right.
Motion for a motion for 5-minute break, if that's okay.
Okay, that'll be fine, everybody. Let's just take a 5-minute break. It is 10:19. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Thank you. $5 minutes. I think it might have been 5 minutes by now, isn't it? Hold on just a second. Well, I think I'm muted.
So we were ready for number 10.
Yeah, we were ready for number 10.
Yeah, Frankie's back now.
All right, if everybody's back, we'll call this meeting back to order. Okay, we were discussing, getting ready to discuss number 10, 0780-05-02-.10, certificates of completion of training. Well, everybody should know what that is. This is the form that you fill out, correct? Completes the training, including an examination required by the Act. The applicant certified trainer shall submit a statement to the commissioner on the subscribed form. And this is where you tell them about the new form.
Okay. Now, and another thing that I wanted to point out here is this rule does not say, in the rule, it it tells some things that you're supposed to put there. Name and certification of the trainer, social of the applicant, what kind of training was completed, and the date of completion. Well, it needs to be an E and say that the test score should be there because we require a certain test score, but we don't require in our rule here that you put that on there. So Jesse, in my opinion, I think that we should add that if we go in and do this down the road. So I've made a note of that there should be an E and say that the test score should be on there because we do require a certain test score. And if they send it in without that, then we can't process it. So now the last time we met, you guys voted unanimously to change
I sent you an email.
to change that form, and I have stellar news for you today.
Yes, we're
Effective
Give up now.
today, everybody but Chief Brown.
So Mike,
No, I'm
why
just
don't you-
kidding. Effective
I want you to
today, even
on.
though it may not be your first time, effective today, the new training form has been officially approved, and starting right now, you can start using that new form, and I'll send it to everybody
Wonderful.
when we get through with the meeting.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Chief, I'll send you a copy too.
Wonderful.
So
Yes, this is,
and then I'm going to try to get it out to all the other certified trainers across the state, and as well as soon as we possibly can. But so that should be, if nothing else, it'll be great whenever they're trying to attach that to their application, and there's only one page for training, and now there's only one page. So that should prevent some of the issues that we've had in the past. So I do appreciate everybody's assistance on that, and it happened on this side of the fence quicker than I thought. So anyway, it's a done deal. So thank you all for that.
now that doesn't mean that you're not going to be using that and then find out that we need to tweak it a little bit. A little tweaking can be done, but to change the whole concept, we'd have to go back to the forms committee. Just so happens that we did an ASAP to the forms committee and it got changed. It's fantastic. Okay, so we have accomplished something with this.
A baby
still-
step.
Yeah, but it's an accomplishment. All right, now let's we're ready. We'll move down to the next one, which is 0780-05-02-.11 certified trainers. She sent it. Okay. That's the only names I could think of anyway. Any individual who seeks to provide training the use of non-lethal weapons must qualify as a certified trainer under 6235-126 and in this rule. Any individual, number 2, any individual who wishes to become a certified trainer shall submit an application to Commissioner on prescribed form. The application shall include C says 3 sets of classifiable prints. We do not get those anymore. So this is something, Jesse, that we'll need to take out of the rules.
Jesse, do you think we should?
Well, I think if we take it out here, and most people who are trainers are also still holding active registration cards as armed or unarmed guards. Is that correct?
A lot of them
I
are.
do, yeah.
Because I know under the statute for, we have discretionary power, I guess, the commissioner has discretionary power to determine whether or not someone's qualified to be a trainer. And I would think one of the first things we would look at, if you want to be an armed guard trainer, have you been an armed guard? So I think we would have those prints from that.
But you don't have to be.
Right.
I
It's
know
not
I mean,
required.
Right.
it's not
You
a
wouldn't
requirement to
have to
be.
be. I mean, you could
Yeah.
have been an exempt, you could have been law enforcement, I suppose, and
Mhm.
had all of your experience through an exemption. So that's true. If they're not giving it to us though, and it's because it's not in the statute, but it's in the rule, then I think removing it from the rule's fine, but maybe we need to come back and talk about putting it in the statute and making changes there. They'll take a lot longer, obviously, but if
Right.
we're opening up rule changes, we could remove it just because it's not
It's
applicable
not,
at this point.
it's not anything that we can do. The FBI will
Right.
not let the TBI accept them because it's not in our statute. And
Right.
we have the ORI number, which would fall under PPS, but in the statute, it does not say that you have to have fingerprint card. That's what the problem was. We put it in the rule, but we didn't put it in the statute. So that we talked about that earlier. Disclosure of any affiliation with the contract security company, PSO organization. Does that new application you made ask us where the trainer's at? It just asks us where they're training, doesn't it?
On
What
the
facility
application,
on that new training form?
oh, the training form, well, we don't really care who they're affiliated with on the training form. We want to know on the
Okay,
training form, we want to know where your classroom is and where your
classroom. Yeah.
range is in case we want to come and sit through and audit your class. We just need to know where it is and where you had it at. But as far as for them to make application for us,
Yeah.
it's still on the application where it asks them if they're affiliated with a
Yeah.
company.
Basically where you work. Yeah. Okay. Identification of classifications of training set out below, which would be unarmed, firearm training, baton, chemical spray, and stun gun. So if we're going to change that definition for stun gun, we'll change it there as well, correct? Stun gun training, we would change that to some other verbiage.
We would change it
Electronic
back to the
control
electronic control
device.
device.
Yeah.
Or ECD.
And we could probably say electronic control device and then put in parentheses ECD, and then if we
Yeah.
wanted to use that somewhere else in the language, we could just refer to it as that.
Well, this everybody we're talking to is already certified trainer, so you had to send in a resume, and then you had to prove that you could conduct a class, give your instructor certificate. It tells you it might be some more certificates here. It says the Tennessee Peace Officers. We know that's post. Anything with if you was in the military. Now that does get kind of hairy there too. Now if you're in the military driving a tank, I don't think you qualify. Just like if you're a police officer coming to us with experience, riding a motorcycle may not be the same thing as working in the investigation division. So there are some differences there that we do pay attention to. The National Rifle Association, if there's more that we want to add, I don't know what they are, but you might know what they are. And then we have the non-lethal weapons certificate showing that you've had a course in that for each non-lethal weapon. Any
I
questions?
think Blaze brought up one time, I think the last meeting, where we have language referring to non-lethal. Should we change that to less than lethal?
Yes, I would say that.
Because there are some of these strange situations where you zap somebody with an electronic control device and it kills them, or even I guess the pepper spray. I mean, there's exceptions in the medical field to every rule, just about. So
I do think you need to change it to say less than lethal.
okay, what's the consensus from the rest of the group?
I agree.
I absolutely
Pretty much
agree
lethal
with
or
that.
less than lethal.
I agree.
I agree as well.
I agree too.
Anybody disagree with that?
All right, I think that's the consensus. Then we're going to say less than non-lethal.
Less than lethal.
less than lethal.
Yeah, instead of non-lethal.
Yeah, less than non-lethal. That would be like your words, telling them to cease and desist.
It's kind of like my wife. She uses the term unthaw. She'll say, we're going to get some chicken out of the freezer and unthaw it. And I'm like, if you unthaw it, you're going to refreeze it. I point that out to her. So.
And you wonder how he stayed married.
And somehow, Jeff, you're still wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The name called instructor with applicant to appoint. Okay. This is about the trainer. We kind of touched up on this last time, but the assistant trainer. Is this the section we're at?
Yeah, and of course I added that to the new training form. So there is a line there now that you can put an assistant trainer to submit that form.
Says here that you're gonna pay $25 to add the classification of those 3 classifications to your certification. That does not mean, that means, well, let me back up. What that simply means is if you're an unarmed trainer, you want to be armed, you must reapply. That's another $150 and meet all the requirements. Got to be 21 years of age, we know that. You have to notify us in 10 days if any material changes, which obviously would be your address, your telephone number, your email address. You need to keep us up to date on everything. 5, I just don't believe I've ever done that. If the commission determines the applicant for certification training is qualified to conduct only one type of training permitted by this rule, the commission shall limit the terms of trainers. We haven't done that. We do issue a 2-year license. Now, that does bring up another discussion. When we see a applicant for an armed guard, you would automatically qualify for an unarmed guard trainer. They get real confused about that. Then they come back later and want to be an unarmed trainer. Well, they have to make new application. So we do take a look at that, and if that's what they wish to do, we will automatically, or will, with their approval, add the unarmed to it.
Basically, when I'm working a file, if you check armed and you qualify for armed, I just automatically make you an unarmed trainer. Because I've had some people call me back and say, well, it says right here unarmed. I said, well, does it also say firearms? They'll say, well, yeah. I said, well, that means you can do both. And that's how we indicate if you're an armed trainer, it doesn't say you're an armed trainer. It gives you a classification for firearms. And that's what that means. And so it's just a semantics or terminology.
I
Okay.
have a question, Jeff.
Yes.
On the initial certification to be a trainer in these various disciplines, the trainer has submit documentation that he or she has received some type of certification to be a trainer, through some school or what have you. But
That's
after
correct.
that, is there any requirement down the road that the trainer maintain certification in these disciplines if the discipline expires?
There's nothing in there as it now.
There's nothing in our statutes and there's nothing in our rules that says that if you're qualified to do those things when I review that application, then I give you those qualifications. And then, of course, that's what your continuing education is supposed to be about. During the future, you can go back. But if you don't go back and get those things, and let's say your OC spray instructor runs out, and you're still doing that. Well, I don't see that stuff anyway. And if a person got caught, if they were using that, and it came back that you were not certified to teach that anymore and you still were, then I have a feeling you might be in trouble with that. But that's not something that we monitor or look at here on this side.
That was the reason I was posing it.
I had
Long
one
as
other
you
thing.
as long as you maintain your license and you renew, that's what we look at.
One other thing, when a new person submits their application and they're a certified so-called firearms trainer, typically it's handgun, and many do have the discipline of shotgun. But on the card, it doesn't say, it just says firearms, according to the Department of Commerce and Insurance. Can teach firearms, but to me, they would need to be certified and also the discipline of shotgun if they were going to teach that. I know that's very few. I get very few calls for shotguns, but I do that. But I see some people, they don't have that certification.
Well, Leroy, I've had some that will want to be an armed instructor, and they'll have certifications for shotgun and rifles and different things. And you and I know there's a difference in that, but then at the same time, I have the simplest firearms rule on earth. I have one rule, and has to do with the muzzle. And the muzzle of anything, whether it's a shotgun or a pistol or a rifle, is to me is all the same. You do not want to be on the wrong side of that muzzle when it goes bang. And keeping that in mind, I'll make somebody an armed trainer if they have training in any kind of firearms. Now, I agree that there are techniques and things about shooting a pistol that are a little bit different. I mean, whether you're going to do it accurately in one arm or one hand versus two hands, things like that. But a firearm is a firearm as far as being able to teach that course.
I concur with Mr. Ferris. You can be a handgun instructor and not had any training in long guns. And yeah, I think there should be a separate certification for long guns. And I know that it's not in the statute for assault rifles for guards, but a shotgun is a long gun. But that's just my opinion.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you. Let's just move on. Well, I'm sure we'll have that conversation again.
I'll make a note of that.
Number 8 is your copy, because I could have an old copy. Number 8, the non-refundable fee is $150 and it shall expire 1 year after the date of issuance. Is that what you have on your copies? Is that what it says?
Where
Well,
was this? Oh,
number 8. That's
number
not true.
8.
That we need to fix that. It's a 2
Yeah,
year.
number 8 needs to be fixed.
It's a Jesse. We need to change that. It's a 2 years. Everything converted to 2 years, and this is
And
one that we missed.
and this copy is what comes off of our website.
All
So
right.
it's as recent as possible.
Well.
Yeah.
Well, and we're gonna need to change it to reflect it's a 2 years license. If there's no more discussion about that, we'll just move on down to the training records. 0780-05-02-.12 training records. Certified training shall maintain records of all students enrolled. You know that. Include all information and ratings considered by the certified trainer and determine whether a student has successfully completed the training form. We talked about you turning in the training at the last meeting. You turned in the training form and have written down at the bottom, Johnny really needs to have more training. Or I wouldn't put Mary out on the street, but they passed. That may be for your records, but if you send in a training form and it has a passing score, we're required to take it. We had one trainer who was very famous about doing that. Every time I saw a training form, it had some kind of note on the person. But if that's what you need to keep for your records, you need to keep that. The records required to be kept on paragraph shall be maintained for a period of 3 years. You know, you keep your records for 3 years. If you're in this business, you probably keep it a whole lot longer. But you're required to at least keep it on 3 years. All training forms must have original signature of certified trainer. this is something we need to look at too, Jesse. Now
Yep.
we're doing electronic signatures. Is this not something I'm going to write electronic? We need to kind of look at it.
Basically, this specifically says we won't take photocopied and stamps and things like that, and that's a difference in 30 years.
Yeah,
Makes.
it's just something that needs to be changed there. If no discussion there, we'll move on to the next one. 0780-05-02-.13 monitoring training programs. Ladies and gentlemen, that simply means that we can come in and monitor in your class anytime we want to. I think long it is at business hours. Well, your business hours may be from 7 to 11 at night because you're doing a class. Well, we'd come to see you. Some of you, we have set on some of your classes. So.
And you can provide us donuts and coffee, but we can't drink it and eat it. So.
Not unless everybody does. You know.
So it's the thought that counts.
Yeah. That's why I always have my own money with me. That's for sure. Then we'll go down to the next one, 0780-05-02-.14, Withdrawal of Certification. I just don't believe I've used this one too often. May withdraw the certification of a trainer if at reasonable notice and opportunity for a hearing the commissioner finds that such trainer. This would be fall in Jesse's wheelhouse there. And I do remember only the one case that we had. We knew a trainer who shall remain nameless was selling these certifications. He would give me $100 and I'll write this out for you and not train you. Well, we sort of knew that, just really, really, really couldn't approve it. Well, the gentleman made a mistake one day after about 4 or 5 years of watching him and seeing what he was doing, because we never could get anybody to testify. He made one mistake. He put his training forms in the U.S. mail. He used to always hand deliver them from out of county. He always hand delivered his training form. But one time he put them in the U.S. mail. He spent 3 years incarcerated for that. That's the only trainer that I know that we've ever taken that stream. So we do get calls that this trainer trained me, and I'm over here at this other company now, and they said that trainer didn't train me right. And yeah, well, I paid him $100, but I didn't do nothing. I just walked in there, and he gave me the certificate. Well, we take that real serious. But Jesse would tell you, we have to have someone who's going to testify to that. We got to have proof of that, so it's very difficult. But we'll just go ahead now, go down to the next one, 0780-05-02-.15, authorized weapons. No, the commissioner is not going to approve AR-15s or whatever those weapons are called. Now, this is my viewpoint on it. You may have a different viewpoint on it. If I'm a certified trainer, I have somebody coming in there and want me to train him on a AR-15 or whatever they're called, just to say AR-15, and I'm eligible to do that, I can do that. Well, I'd go ahead and take the money and train them. But they're not going to be a security guard. You're not going to send it to the state. I'm sure there's probably people out there on the street, but they want to be trained in those type of weapons. But they're not going to be use it as a security personnel.
Don't send me one of those new forms with that written on it.
No. Well, you're probably going to get a phone call if you do.
Or an old one.
Yeah. Yeah, we've made some of those. And I'm going to take a moment here just to tell you, sometimes I do make courtesy calls, and that's what I call them. we've got maybe a complaints come through from somebody, we go back and we look at the training form and or their application, they don't have a phone number, don't have an email address, but you trained them, so I'll come back to you and say, hey, do you have any information on this individual? Do you know what company he was working for? Did he give you she a email address? So sometimes we come back to you because we're trying to gather different information. And you are keeping that information for at least 3 years. That says the holder of the armed guard registration may carry a firearm in the performance of his duty if they're qualified. If you say they're qualified. We went over the firearms, I believe, the last time. There are a couple that have been added: 38, 32, 357, 9mm, 10mm, 40, 45. Do we need to add anything else?
My question is, do we need to add, we've got the 357 SIG and the 380 auto specifically mentioned by that caliber. They are 9mm. Do we need to add those because based on their specific name? And
Always
just add it?
interpreted .380 does mean 380. That's the way I've interpreted
Yeah.
.380. And it doesn't really say 38 special, which is the correct nomenclature of a 38 revolver. It just says .38.
It does say that, but a 357 SIG is actually a 9mm, and so is a 380. So my
Oh.
question is, do we need to add the 380 as a 380, and do we need to add the 357 SIG specifically as a 357 SIG?
I would clean it up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, those two have been added. A question was sent to the commissioner, and I have the dates and who the commissioner were. Those specific weapons have been added by the commissioner. So, Jesse, do we need to put those in there?
I don't think we would need to, since it says other firearm approved by the commissioner, but I think it makes sense to add it, though. I think someone had said to clean it up, and I think that's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
So we can talk to the commissioner just to make sure that he understands that he's approved this, and that he's fine with us including it in there. But I think it's better to be specific about it, because if you've got someone who isn't aware that it has been approved, and they're asking about it, they can now go to the statute if we clean it up. So I think
Okay.
it makes sense. We can add it.
Yeah.
We want to take off the 32.
Yeah.
We don't have a 32 anymore.
Well, I
I'm
haven't seen a
not-
person carry that since the 1970s.
Yeah.
It's on there.
It's still
I'd
a
leave it. I mean,
weapon.
I'd just leave it.
Yeah, it's still a weapon to use.
Yeah.
32. I'm not. It doesn't have that much firepower, probably, if that's what you're saying.
Not recommended for defensive purposes.
And this is Blaze, and to Leroy's point, I'm with him on the 32 kind of not being used in a minute. And to your point, Cody, that it doesn't have much firepower. I would also venture to say, and I'd like your guys' opinion, the 380, despite being a 9mm, as far as a ballistic performance and the point of our job not being self-defense, but or at least in the context of a civilian carrying a firearm, but being rather security, I don't prefer the 380 because of its lack of performance in what we're trying to do.
I think we're getting into policy with companies. I mean, you've got people, when you've got the Beretta Bearcat that's a 32 or a 380, that some of these guards, carrying their own ankles for backups.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
I think that you leave what's there, and I use the word cleanup about adding 357 SIGs. I think that would be a company policy, what they would allow their employees to carry. I don't think that's a trainer issue.
No.
I think
Also-
I think what has happened is the ammunition industry has significantly improved the ballistics of the 32 auto and the 380 with modern powder and things like that. And they have been able to show that they're more effective than they once were. And I think that may be where some of this is coming from. Would I want to go into battle with either one of those? Probably not, but.
All right. That sounds like this is going to be a discussion we're going to have further whenever we go to do the arm portion. All right.
You
The next-
also need to add in on where it says 38. You also have the 38 semi-automatic, the 38 super.
I actually think I wondered about that the other day when I was reading this and making the comments, and technically a 38 super would be legal according to our current terminology, even though it's not listed specifically. And also, here's something else to think about. So would a 454 Casull. And I don't think you want that out there on the street either, but because it's a 45 caliber, I think even the 460 Smith & Wesson is a 45 caliber. Is that right?
That's right.
And you dang sure don't want that. You could shoot through 14 apartment buildings and 3 cars with that thing.
Yep.
The 38 Super is actually a 9mm by 23. A conventional 9mm cartridge is 9x19. So it's a longer 9mm. 38
That's all.
Super is 9mm by 23mm. The casing,
Yeah.
just like your regular standard, if you want to call that the old 9mm Luger, is 9x19, and a 380 is 9x17 by SAMI standards, the Sporting Arms Ammunition Manufacturing Institute. They're what set standards in America, with one exception, that's NATO. So those already interpreted by federal entity, SAMI, they are 9mm, like Jeffrey said earlier. 38 Super is 9x23.
Or what about a Taurus judge? I mean, you're gonna certify somebody with a Taurus judge to carry a 45 long Colt, check their gun every time to see if they've got any 410 shotgun shells in it?
But it says, the law says 45 caliber revolver or semi-automatic pistol.
However,
Not the law, the rule says that. The rule says that.
however, you have the Taurus that could be chambered 410 shotgun with a 45 long Colt. I mean, but that statute doesn't cover 410 shotgun.
I agree.
Well, that means if you were carrying a judge with 410 shells in it, you would be in violation of this rule.
Correct.
So
All right, we're gonna move on from this one here. This one's going to require us to have more of a discussion later on when we get that one. I wanted to go down to C. It says the firearms carried pursuant to a written directive. Who's seen a written directive lately? Okay. It says here, in which we've never done this, an armed guard shall not work unless he or she is in possession of a valid written directive. A written directive, if you look back, always referred to law enforcement having a written directive.
We used to, I had those back 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. Should that even be in there?
No,
Well,
I think y'all changed the law. I mean, back in the day, you had to go to the local sheriff and get your written directive along with your armed guard card. And then y'all did something
yep.
past the statute where we don't have to do, the guards don't have to do that anymore. Am I
Right.
correct? If that's then you need to take, I would say take it out of there.
just remove C.
Yeah.
Well, are they even writing written directives anymore?
My
don't know
understanding,
where I'm-
100 years ago, that's not required.
Even for law enforcement?
The only people I know of that require a written directive today are someone like a special police or like a deputy who is working as a reserve. The sheriffs will write a written directive to them. They don't get a
Yeah.
full commission in some counties, even though they're supposed to by the post commission, but there are some I feel like are still doing that in some of these rural counties.
Okay, because we had some other discussions. Okay, Jesse, we probably need to take a look at C then.
We'll talk about that, especially with
Yeah.
that other bill with retired law enforcement as well.
Right.
So we'll talk about both at the same time.
Yeah. Other weapons, carry the baton, the stun gun. We're gonna change that verbiage again. Change the stun gun. That verbiage right there. Or any place that we see it through it. Which ones? Prior to carrying it, you have to have 4 hours of training for the baton and chemical spray and the stun gun. So we all know that. 4 hours is what that needs. And you know now that when you do train them on that, what do we call
Less
it?
than lethal.
Less than lethal. I think you have to say that a couple of times. You give them a card and you keep the information. You do not send that information to the state. The only thing we get's for the armed and the unarmed.
And if you happen to be a certified trainer and you're just a certified trainer and you've got your own training school, like for Donald, you're not running a contract security company, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so in your case, if you train somebody to do this, you just give them the credentials. They go back to their contract security company, and the contract security company is required to keep their credentials in their files, and then they carry on their person a card that says they're trying to do that. But so you don't even, I would,
May I interrupt, please, for a
sure,
second?
sure.
I terribly apologize. My wife and daughter just got into a vehicle accident, so I'm going to
Oh,
have
no.
to get on out of here.
You go take care of that.
Take care of that.
Our prayers are with them.
Prayers with you, bro.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, buddy.
Okay.
My question was going to be regarding the less than lethal training. There is no expiration date. Is that correct, or should there now be one?
It doesn't tell us here in this statute anything about an expiration date. I believe that probably left up to the trainer.
Well, I
Never
think
listed.
I think that's left up to the company, or well, like an ass baton. If you carry that, I mean, they don't go bad after a year or two. I mean, they
Right.
don't, like pepper spray it probably has an expiration date on it at some point. Or a stun gun may have batteries that expire after a certain amount of time or something. But like on a baton, the only reason you would want to renew it in 2 years is because somebody's looking for a renewal fee, I guess.
Yeah, and that's why I was posing that question. That, as far as I understood, there's no recertification requirement by the state.
No. Once
No.
once you have issued that, according to what this said, it doesn't say anything about renewing it at all.
That's what I thought. I'm just confirming. Thank you.
Okay. I think the rest of it's pretty self-explanatory. Let's move. We just got a little bit longer. The next one is 0780-05-02-.16, which is a change of address. Simply says that you got 10 days to tell me you moved. I'd also like you to tell me if you have a new email address, because everything that's going to be sent out to you is going to be sent out over the system. So we will need to know your email address, or you change your telephone number. That's pretty self-explanatory. 0780-05-02-17 notification of termination. A licensee or PSO organization shall notify the Commissioner of Variety within 10 days the death or termination of an employee registrant for any occurrence in which could be reasonably affected the employee registrant's right to hold a certificate. I do get notifications when a person has passed away. People do tell me that. I don't know if you're looking at this as every time you are a contract security company, especially every time I've lost an I'm an employee, a security guard, armed or unarmed, I have to notify the state. There is no way that I can handle that volume of paperwork. They change just like the alarm people do. I think every time the news comes on, they're with a new company. They do move around a lot. But I still do get some companies that will send in terminations like every 3 or 4 months. They send me this list of people that have been terminated. I cannot do anything with it because the license does not belong to, the registration card does not belong to the company. It belongs to the individual. So they can move anytime they wish. That's the way I read that. The next one is 0780-05-02-.18 investigations and complaints. Well, we'll fall back on Jesse on this, but this simply means that we have the right to investigate these, is what he's saying, and that we do a complaint. File a written answer. We got, what does it say there, 20 days to respond to. We do that. If I'm not mistaken, Jesse, we get a complaint in.
Normally we send them a letter. We'll send them an email. And we'll let them know I'm not sure if that's something that you all normally include in your training, but we do have guards every once in a while who, and they may just forget it, but they do say, well, I didn't know that I had to respond to this complaint. So it's something I think that we could consider putting in the training just to remind them. But a lot of guards will say they didn't realize they had to, but we send them emails, we send them letters. We do try to give them plenty of options.
And if I'm not mistaken, that's $100 fine. Failure to respond to the state is how that's
Sometimes
worded.
sometimes we'll do it as a letter of warning if that's the
Mhm.
only issue, and sometimes we'll do $100 penalty.
I'm going to chime in here. I think we definitely, this is kind of how I've always created curriculum is if there's a problem, and if we've got guards saying that they didn't know, I didn't know this, I didn't know that, then to tackle that problem, you put it in the curriculum and you teach it, and you have a test question about it. So let's be thinking about that, guys and gals. Let's put that in the training. Just in the section where we talk about the rules or whatever, we'll just put a little blurb in there. Hey, the state will investigate any complaints, and if you have a complaint filed against you, you must respond, or whatever we want to say about that. So let's make sure. I think that should be in the training. We shouldn't have a guard coming to us saying, well, I violated the law because I didn't know any better. And you may have that, but we need to be able to back up and say, well, you should have known better because it's in the training, and here it is in black and white. So let's
A
keep that
question
in
along
mind.
that lines, if I may, Jeff. I know years ago, and I realize employment issues have come up. Do we have any way where the state is able to check whether there's compliance with these security companies, making sure their officers are properly credentialed?
We do that as what we would refer to as a compliance inspection. I have done that over the years. I have not done one. Yeah, I have not done one recently. I don't have my own investigators anymore. I used to have 3 just for our division section here.
That's what I thought, because I remember years ago, I would get a call from a security company saying, man, this guy from the state said he's going to shut me down because he found out I have 3 officers working and they weren't certified. And I thought that was wonderful, because there was a check and balance. But now I hear, and again, it's just grapevine, but I hear from some of the other officers that there's a lot of folks out here in the Shelby County, Memphis area that are uncredentialed. And of course, there's nothing I can do about it.
Well,
Normally,
if you hear about it, somebody files a complaint, Jesse, that we'll do the investigation on that. And that's why whenever I always tell, and Jesse does as well, whenever we're going to come to a company or ask for information from a company, we want to know your roster. We want to know we like to know who your security guards are. But we also want to see your payroll records, because we have found out over the years a roster and payroll records are 2 different things.
we've
So,
had
yeah.
a few, especially companies that'll operate between states, between Arkansas and Tennessee, for example. We'll find out that there's one guard. We'll find one guard who is unlicensed, and normally I'll have our investigator check the whole roster, because sometimes if it's one, there's more. We kind of cover it that way, since Cody's not able to do as many compliance checks. So normally when we get a complaint, that's one of the first things we do is check to see who's licensed and who's unlicensed, even if it's an allegation of a guard doing something that was improper, or engaging in misconduct.
So to answer that, Don, yes, we do attempt to do that.
Okay, thank you. I thought that had changed a little bit too, so I appreciate it.
The next one is 0780-05-02-19 prohibited presentations. Okay, it simply means that you can't say that you're a contract security company or a PSO without a license. I believe what that says. That's pretty
Well,
self-explanatory.
For this portion, Ms. Fest,
Uh-huh.
I'd actually, the purpose of this committee is to come up with standard curriculum.
Uh-huh.
So it says at the end that hasn't been endorsed by the
By the
commissioner.
commissioner. Uh-huh.
So I thought maybe it's set for certified trainers who are using the standard curriculum.
Okay, let's see. No licensed, registered, certified trainer or PSO organ shall represent that he or she or any aspects of his business or activity has been recommended or endorsed. And you're suggesting to add what to that?
We're devising a standard curriculum
Yeah.
with this committee, so
Well,
something.
so like right now, if Angel said, well, I'm using the curriculum that the commissioner set forth. Well, we don't want to make it look like he's violating section 19 because he's claiming that. So, because right now it's not, he doesn't have to use what we say to use. It's just suggested.
I think to
All
go
right.
to his point, we could add
Yeah.
endorsed by the commissioner, remove that period, comma, notwithstanding a trainer who's advising his or her students that he's using the training set forth by the certified trainer committee. I think that's something that we could add pretty easily.
Okay.
I've made a note here too.
Yeah.
And that's a good point, Angel. I hadn't
Thank
thought
you.
about that one. That's why I wanted all of y'all to be looking at this, because y'all see some things that
We
we
wouldn't
don't
see.
sometimes.
All right, the next one is 0780-05-02-.20 surrender of license or registration card. Any license or registration card which is revoked or suspended by the commissioner, shall be surrendered to the commissioner within days. That would fall into Jesse's realm as well. Now you remember I told you a license is a company, a registration is the guard, and the certification is you. So it's saying a company or security officer, security guard, is responsible for this. It falls into their realm there. The next one is 0780-05-02-.21 copy fee. There is no such thing. Used to get a book. As those of you that still has that little gray book, I think it's tan or gray now, whatever. Mine's so dog-eared. Even I don't have a new book. But if everybody wanted a new book, it was $5 for the book. We have asked for books, and we've told it's on the internet. You just need to make yourself one. So we can leave that in there, or yes, that's it right there, Frankie. But that's the latest one. Is that 2007? Oh, look at Curtis got his too.
What year's on that, Frankie?
2007.
Okay.
You're on.
2004. I
Oh,
couldn't
that's
afford
four.
$5.
That you didn't get to 7. Curtis, what's yours? Is yours still 4? Okay. So
Yes, mine is still 4 as well. I did not get this 7.
I'm sorry. I got a 7. Okay.
Do we need to frame
But
this?
yeah, you need to
Yes.
keep it.
That's one. That's
Gold.
one of 2 of the last ones on Earth, right there.
Oh, well, I think it'd be great. Once we get all this set up, I'm going to ask if we could not at least have so many of them printed. So for our certified trainers, for our company owners, for a new trainer who comes on, we used to give out these books whenever you're a new trainer and the suggested curriculum. So I think we need to, instead of just throwing them to the wolves, we need to give them some. So I will be looking at trying to get this done again once we get this all
And I am
finalized.
giving them a little bit now, but just
Yeah.
a hodgepodge of
So
stuff.
Jesse, do we need to remove that?
I think so. Because if we end up re-implementing that later,
We're going to charge $5. Well, there'd be more than $5 because those books, if we print under 5,000, I think the fee was something like if you look at the back of the book, it'll tell you $1, $1.25, $1.50 or something. And that's because we ordered 5,000 at one time, just like we did our fingerprints cards.
Right.
Okay, we'll just leave that in there to hoping we can
Yeah.
do this again. All right, then we're going to come down to 0780-05-02-.22 is reserved. In case we need to stick
Frankie's
something.
showing us.
Hey, Frankie.
What you got there, Frankie?
Who is that?
That's the armed
That's your
director.
son?
That's your written directive. All right. Still got that. Yep. On the back is his fingerprint. All right. See, some of us don't throw away nothing. That's for sure. Okay, let's go down to the fees. We're not going to spend much time on this. 0780-05-02-.3 fees. You're all certified trainers, but this simply means you're going to make application and pay $300. Then no, this is for a contract security company. So I read it wrong myself. They're paying the $300. Then they pay for the number of guards that they have. What 0 to 49 or more than 50. So it's 4 1/4 or 7 1/4, actually what that is. And then you have the renewal fees. If you went over to the next page, you have, let's go to number 2 is your certified trainer. That is $100 plus any fingerprinting processing fee, which we don't do, Jesse.
No,
That
certified
is,
trainer's 150. Does
it
yours
says
say 100?
Mine says 100. Anybody else's out there say 100 under certified number 2?
Yes, mine says 100.
100. And I've got it from the online.
So, okay, well, it's 150, so we need to get this
Oh, I
changed.
see it now. Yeah, I missed that.
It is 100. It has been 150 for years.
It goes
No.
down. Go down to the
Yeah,
next one
okay.
where it
Yeah,
says
It adds
okay, yeah,
$50
okay.
to it.
It is.
Yeah, go
There
to
you
B.
go. Okay.
Under
All right.
B.
That's the problem that I've always ran into.
Oh,
There
yeah.
is an application fee, and then there's what they refer to as a registration fee.
And C says it's 150.
Yeah,
Yeah,
C does
there
say
you
it's,
go.
that's for the renewal.
The
So,
renewal. So
yeah.
the fee to be a certified trainer is a 150, and a renewal is 150.
Yeah.
So, okay, so everybody knows that. The penalty is $50 per 3 months. Now let's talk about that just a second. Your license expired, or trainer, a security guard license expires today. Today's the 31st. You are expired as of midnight.
Right.
Tomorrow is April the 1st. Well, you're not supposed to be working. You're on an expired license. But the statute gives you 3 months to get back into compliance without having to do everything all over again. It doesn't say you got an extra 3 months to work and just pay us at the end of the 3 months again, just pay late fee.
You can do everything but work.
That's right. And the computer will say expired grace. Is what, if you pay attention to it, it says expired grace. That is
Okay.
to get you back into compliance without having to reapply all over again. But you're not supposed to work on an expired application, expired license, excuse me.
And the same thing as a certified trainer. Once your license, once your certification expires and you go into grace, you can get it all fixed back up without running through that big long hassle, but you're not supposed to keep training people. Because I'll tell you,
No.
our system won't let us
Won't
put
take
your
it.
won't let us put your number in. If we put your number in and you're in expired grace, if you expire today and you train somebody tomorrow and I try to process that file and I put your file number in, it's going to turn red and green and lock up and call the
Yeah.
Pentagon and everybody.
We have a hard time getting that reopened for the certified trainer. So we have to be careful of that. So we went down to 3 was the security guard. I've tried to do this for years, but I think it's the way it is in the statute. It says, for instance, an unarmed guard pays $50 for an application, $20 for the certification. Registration, excuse me. So it's really $70. Well, I got some real intelligent people out there that don't want to send in anything but paper applications with $50. Okay, so that means we have to stop in our office. There's something wrong because it's not going through the system. We have to stop and say, okay, we've looked at everything. This person's qualified. Then we have to send out what we call a document return form and ask them for the $20. It has to come through the mail. It goes to the U.S. mail, the big state post office up, and then it comes down to us, and then it has to get processed. So you see the delay in that. I have tried over the years to get that as one fee, $50 or $70 or 105. The armed is what, 75 and 30 makes 105.
That's correct. That's how it works out.
But I have some of these companies that want to say, well, you don't understand. I'm going to hire Johnny tonight. I'm going to give him my uniform. I'm going to put him on the post tonight. He's not going to come back tomorrow. Well, that is what I consider the price of doing business. I get,
That's an
I get,
unauthorized workaround on
yeah, yeah.
their behalf.
I get a little hard when they call me about stuff like that because you're not supposed to be working him without the application anyway, without the card. You can work him off the copy of the application if you've kept everything on you. I mean, right. I
And
understand
paid all the fees.
pay all the fees. But this is a little catch in here. So I just want y'all to know we are looking at that. And I'm going to try my best to get that changed again. Then if you look over, that's the armed guard was, the $20 late fee for 3 months, which, just give you time to get in compliance. The unarmed guard is saying 50 and 20 makes 70, and then they have to do the $20 late fee as well. Now, C says applicants to downgrade from, and this is really confusing to some people, applications to downgrade from armed to unarmed status shall be accomplished by a non-refundable, non-proratable fee of $10. Upgrading from unarmed to armed status require complete armed guard application for fees. The $10 actually is $30. It's $10 application and $20 for the registry. That's how you get $30.
And we need to clean that up
We
to
need to change,
say that.
fix that to $30. The
And I've made a note of that.
the system wants that $30. Now, it simply means your armed guard. Now you're going out there making an application to be unarmed. We just pull everything out of your armed guard, stick it in your unarmed guard file. You don't have to do training again. You don't have to do anything. If you are active, if the security guard's in expired grace, we will not accept that.
Everybody hear that? Do y'all have any issues with that? You hear questions or anything about that?
The only thing I was going to bring up is that I thought that the unarmed guard renewal fee was $55, not $50.
No, it's
No,
it's just 50.
It's 50.
Okay.
Yeah. But we have a lot of people that all of a sudden they realize their armed guard has expired. They don't want to go and pay $14 a round for ammunition that they can't find, and so they decide they're gonna downgrade. Well, they're already in expired grace. They cannot downgrade at that point. They'll just have to they'll just have to be expired, let it go, reapply as unarmed, and take the training and everything. Because once the training gets over a year old, it is not valid. So
No, all our trainers know that. That training form that you send in to us is only good for 1 year for them. The guards get real confused about that too. That's why we need to have that date on there, and the date it needs to be plain so we can see that.
and
So
there's
we do.
about 2 places in the statute that talks about that. If y'all ever want to know what that is, I've got it highlighted. I just don't remember it, but it says, not over or less than 1 year or something like that. So
Everybody knows that one. Okay, now we'll go down to 0780-05-02-.24 proprietary security organization unarmed security guard officer registration card. An all unarmed registration cards issued by the Commissioner of Employees of proprietary security organizations shall be stamped to indicate that they are valid. And I told you about that. They get a card just like your unarmed guards do, but it is stamped it says on there PSO, proprietary security organization. A lot of these companies get confused about that too. That does not mean that Johnny can go over here and work for a contract security company. He may not. He can go work for the hospital, the dentist, or somebody, whoever's registered as a PSO, but they have to be registered as a PSO.
And Cody and I have discussed this, and I think most of y'all agreed with it earlier. I think we touched on it a little bit. We ought to be training those people the same as everybody else. And I don't really have a problem with us still indicating on their card they're a PSO. We wouldn't necessarily have to change this. However, if they quit there and wanted to come to work for one of you guys as a contract security company At this point, they would be able to because the training is the same, but that's just, that's kind of our opinion, and I think most of y'all kind of agreed with that.
Right. I think the last meeting that we had, everybody was in favor of the PSO guard needs to be trained like an unarmed guard. It's just 4 hours of training. So that's something that Jesse and I are going to look at. The last thing that we're going to touch up on today is the last thing that's in my book anyway, is 0780-05-02-.25 special event permit. And most of you don't even know what that is. I'm sure. It doesn't affect you. You're a trainer. This affects companies, but you still need to know about it. It's a special event. I'm going to give you a little rundown on that. Bonnaroo is what started this. Whenever they had Bonnaroo, what they do, One Nation, I believe the name of it, gives out the bids for these different companies and tells them how many security guards they can bring in. It tells them what post they're going to be doing and what area they're going to be securing or whatever. So they know, this company knows, I need 300 guards. Well, they would have to make application for those if they didn't have them already on staff, which most of them were out of state anyway. They would come in, they would have to make application for 300 security guards. Well, the problem that we had there was that these security personnel were coming on buses, and they were like 21 or 18, 19 from universities out of state that could come in and work for a day or two and then stay for the event. So it's very hard for us to get, if the fingerprints weren't any good, or if we didn't have a good address, or if they only paid the $50. It was just like a baby nightmare whenever we had these special events. Okay, so we went to the special event permit, and what it says now is a company, guard company that wants to work a special event lets us know in advance. I think, I don't have my glasses, 5 days, I believe it is. You have to make that application and you pay $1,000 and you can bring in anybody you want to. That's not exactly how I had envisioned that to go down. But by the time it came back down to me, this is what I got. So you did understand what I said. You pay me $1,000 and you can work 5 guards, or you can work 5,000. You can call them security guards. They don't have training and they're not vetted.
Is there a time limit involved with that, Ms. Vest?
Yes, you have to tell me, like Bonnaroo will run for a week, like from a Sunday to a Saturday. That certificate that we're going to issue will have the name of the event and will have the beginning and ending date of the event. Now, some of them come in a little bit early to set up, so they will have a little extra dates on that, but that's what they have to tell me.
I kind of understand where this.
Well, hold on just a second. Hold on. Yeah. Oh, yes. I'm sorry, Angel. I had forgotten that. The security guard, they put the onus back on us because they fill out a roster, say like you do, Angel, and you work them. And then there's another event, and Frankie says, I'm going to use this guy because I know he worked there. So that's 2 times he's worked. He can only work so many times within a year, that security personnel. But go ahead and ask me your question, Angel, or
I
statement.
was when I read this, I kind of related it as more as to um, a natural disaster where we have that safety relief, where we could bring in licensed security officers from other states and honor Florida's folks when we come here. This one kind of baffled me. I don't understand why we have this. It doesn't
Let's
make
just
sense.
If something in your scenario, that would probably the governor that would declare a disaster to allow them. That's something else that we handle through our office.
And he did that last
We
year.
did that, and then the company's going to say, we want to fall under that executive order. Then there's procedures that we use for that. But that's not what this is. And they're real particular. You have to ask permission to have a special event permit. The previous commissioner, well, actually, it's the same commissioner. same person now. It says something like the football game is not a special event permit because it's ongoing.
I don't know how the
Bond-free.
other committee members feel,
Mhm.
but I think this is a recipe for disaster here. I don't think this is a great idea. I understand for a natural disaster, bringing in other licensed security officers from other states, but to have a Bonnaroo where they're using and smoking and doing all kinds of things on a site like that, where they're serving alcohol, for instance, it just doesn't make sense to me. I hope I'm not alone there, but
Well, like I said, it went up the hill and it came back down the hill. So now we have a special event
Cody
permit.
envisioned this as being one thing, and when she got it back, she didn't recognize it because it's not what she sent up there. So
I completely understand. But I would assume at a Bonnaroo, you're having alcohol served, and we have special provisions in the chapter for folks that are doing security in a place that serves alcohol. I'm just throwing
Well,
that
there-
out.
Angel,
Make it-
sorry, Cody, I didn't mean to
Go ahead.
interrupt.
No, go ahead.
I'm gonna be blunt. This thing has more holes in it than Swiss cheese. Like you said, Bonnaroo, I've been to Bonnaroo. It's amazing, but there are all kinds of drugs going on, all kinds of alcohol. Does this specify for armed guards? Is it only unarmed guards?
Yes,
mean,
it's only unarmed guards.
Okay, but there's nothing in here that really says that I see. Or maybe I'm not reading it correct.
Yeah, it might be on the application that we'd have to look at the application, but I know it's for unarmed only. They did not approve armed guards. You can't come in here and carry a gun and not have training.
Exactly.
That's the
That's
way
what I'm
I
getting at.
always felt. That's the way I've always felt about it. So it is on the application.
it probably ought to say that in the rule somewhere. It should
It should say that in the
specify
because it
unarmed
is-
at least.
Yes, yes, because it doesn't say anything in here whether it's armed or unarmed. It just says temporary security officers for special events. So that's
Right.
kind of misleading and confusing.
And
I agree
if
with
somebody
you.
was to get their hands on the rule when they're putting in the application, they can go, well, it's not in there. So
Exactly.
why can't my guards carry?
Right. Okay. There may be some clarification that we need on that, but let me explain this to you. This has been on the books for several years. This is nothing new. We do go to Bonnaroo. We do send investigators to Bonnaroo. I have been down there every year that Bonnaroo has been into effect to look at their rosters. We have our people go down during the event. They walk around. If you ever been to Bonnaroo, you'll see they wear different color T-shirts, and that represents different companies. So we go up to somebody who's working a purple, and maybe they work for ABC, and we got the roster. We need to make sure that that person's name's on that roster. That's how we check that.
Okay.
But no,
And
this
some of
has
this
been
is-
on the books for quite a while here, hadn't it? Does it even tell you how long that's been? 18?
2018.
Yeah, so
Some
we've
of
done
the,
it for several years.
Some of these concerns are actually in the statute as well, which is in TCA 6235-105. If you look at D1, it does specifically say that the guards, the temporary guards, cannot be armed. So that is actually addressed
Oh,
in the
okay.
statute itself.
Okay.
D1?
Yes, we look at 6235-105, D1. Notwithstanding any provision of this chapter to the contrary, properly licensed contract
Yeah.
security company may use temporary employees not registered with the department as temporary security guards for special events upon the
There you
approval
go.
of special event permit by the commissioner. A temporary security guard used pursuant to this subdivision D1 must, and then it says be 18 years of age, act as temporary security for no more than 10 days in a calendar year,
Yeah,
have no
that's where it
arrest
is.
authority, and not be armed during the temporary employment.
Right. We just didn't put it in this particular rule here written out like that. But I knew there was only unarmed guards.
But January, you're right. The rule could be updated to reflect that as
yeah.
well, just for especially for consistency purposes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think normally the rule probably would refer back to that statute that you just mentioned, and then that would clarify that. That, as Frankie said
103.
earlier, that would clean it up a little bit.
Yes, Mr. Winfrey, I know that law was passed in 1917 I got my handgun permit and they legislature just passed constitutional carry. The governor's gonna sign it and I'm gonna tote my gun. I'm gonna tote my gun.
You sound like me. I always look at the least common denominator. And I look at for people who are going to look for that loophole and try whatever they can to get around it.
Oh, okay. Well, we did, but like I said, that we've done this just a few times. Bonnaroo is one of the ones that we, especially that does this. And Jesse, I don't know of any problems that we've run into yet. We haven't had any complaints filed that I'm aware of. The companies must ask in advance. This is where they get kind of caught on that because they think maybe, I'm going to do it tomorrow or this weekend. I'm not supposed to do it in advance. I have to ask the commissioner about it.
Well-
Like this. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
And I think too, though, the fact that it's not Bonnaroo who's getting these guards. It has to come
No,
from a licensed CSC. So if if you run a CSC, you're used to having armed guards. You're used to having unarmed guards. You know what type of people you want to hire. But I do agree that you have a bunch of these college students, especially at Bonnaroo, where they're thinking, oh, here's drugs, there's alcohol, there's bands that I want to listen to, and I'm being paid, to work here as a temporary guard. I do think that there's some concern, but hopefully I think that some of that's alleviated by the fact that they're unarmed, it's temporary, and they have to be coming through a licensed CSC. So, I mean, realistically, if there was a complaint, it would come back on that CSC as well, potentially.
Oh yeah, all of the companies that are out there are licensed companies. They have to be. One Nation won't pick them up if they don't. I mean, I just that's the biggest event that we run into. Like I say, some of these things the commissioner does not consider special events. But like I said, they would get with me. They need to ask before they do the application, and it's $1,000. But that's the last thing that we had placed in our book. That's really all I had today. Was there something else, Jeff, that we need to cover?
I just, when we first started this, Angel had sent me a, just for the unarmed portion, the 4 hours, he had sent me his version of a, what would we call that, Angel? That thing you sent me, a schedule or a
Curriculum, yes, sir.
curriculum? Yeah, curriculum. I couldn't come up with a, so I sort of rewrote it and then I expanded it out. And Leroy had responded with some information about, hey, we need to be looking at goals, and I've got all that here somewhere. What did you call them, Leroy? Goals and
Objectives. It's a
objectives.
training objective to ensure the
Yeah.
student has met those objectives.
Yeah. So
on
we
successful completion.
Right. So we come up. So what I did the other day is I sent each one of you individually a kind of an expanded version and asked you to look at both the armed and the unarmed and the marksmanship training and the renewal training. And we need to be thinking about goals and objectives for each one of those. And so I didn't expect you to have those for today, but just be thinking about that going forward as we continue to write this. And the sections that you volunteered to work on, I think Leroy talked about nomenclature. January was going to talk about the legal ramifications of it. So be thinking about what your goals and objectives are. And also throughout this whole thing, be thinking about what questions are you going to draw up from this curriculum? What questions do we need to make sure are answered and make sure that our training addresses those questions, answers those questions, and the curriculum supports it so that when we talk about it, or when we make our presentation to that class, we cover the concepts, cover the questions, whether we just tell them they're questions or whether we just say, hey, make sure you learn this because it's important, or ever how you're going to do that. and then make sure that the goals and objectives are written out and make sure they're met. And then what my other question to Angel was, and I think I asked the question to each one of you individually when I sent that out, is how do you want to, I can see us coming up with two versions. One is the version that's going to be the training material that we present. It may be kind of a nutshell version, but I think we need to have another version that is expanded for the instructor, that's got all the notes to the PowerPoints, and hey, make sure you cover this, make sure you cover that. This is your goal and objective. And I think it's good to have the goals and objectives in the presentation, because
What's our next meeting?
the students need to know what that is. But then at the same time, the instructor, if we have an instructor guide, it's going to go into a lot more detail as to what those objectives and procedures and everything would be. So just be thinking about that going forward as you prepare your different sections that you volunteered to work on. And those are some things to think about to include for future discussions. Any questions about any of that so far? Do y'all feel like we're a little bit better on track and kind of, is everybody comfortable with where we are, or do you think I think we're in good shape and we're not, or anything like that? I think we're doing I think we're headed in the right direction.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay.
I agree. And we have a form, a training form.
Yeah. I mean, that's
Yeah.
an accomplishment.
Hey, as I think Blaze and Angel both said the last one meeting, said if we don't get anything else done, if we can get that thing changed, it'll be pretty good. So
Well, we did that part.
so
Our
yeah.
next meeting is going to be April the 7th. So what is going to be our topic of conversation for that?
17.
Could I propose to the committee that I
Let's see,
the things that I've been talking with Jeff over and the goals and objectives, could we start throwing darts at that and try to improve it?
Yeah, when the 14th.
All right,
Yeah,
let's see.
Angel, yes, I think that would be a good thing. I think we're at a point now where we can
I don't have.
we can go back and start looking at
Yeah,
that. Let me look and see what our next
I got it,
scheduled
too.
meeting is.
I
Yeah,
have
Cody,
down the 7th.
go over the meeting schedule that you have, Cody.
Yeah, I've got April the
7th?
7th and the 26th.
And the 26th, that's a Wednesday and a Monday.
Yeah.
We made a little bit of change because January does something on Wednesdays, and
Yeah.
so we tried to back that one up where it wouldn't conflict with some of her stuff. So the 7th and the 26th are the two April meetings that we have
Can
scheduled.
you move that 7th down to the 14th or something or other? I mean, is that too soon? I mean, that's just like
I was
next week.
actually hoping to keep it the same, because if we were to at the next meeting throw darts at what's proposed, that'd give me a little while to come back.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then
to
you'd have
revise.
2 full weeks and then some to come up with something for the 26th.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I can tell you, I won't be able to make it because I'm teaching my handgun permit class. Right now, I'm the only instructor that can teach on Wednesdays.
Okay, you mean for on the 7th?
On the 7th.
On the 7th.
Okay.
It doesn't make any my calendar's open. I can do the 6th or the 8th. It doesn't matter. Or we just leave it the 7th. I mean,
And if y'all can deal with me not being there on the 7th and coming back on the 26th.
Well, we can just assign you more things to do since you're not there.
Jeff, you and I are going to have a discussion later.
Isn't that the way it works? Whoever's not there gets the whatever we find out needs to be done. We'll just.
I've already posted these dates, so let's just stick with the 7th
Yeah,
and the
that's fine.
26th.
I mean-
If it's okay. In January, you can go out on the. We can send it to you if you need it. You can go out on the website and see the committee meeting.
Yeah, you can watch it later.
Watch that. Okay. So
Hey, let me tell you this. The next 2 meetings, the ones we've been doing have been on WebEx.
Mm-hmm.
The next 2 meetings are going to be through Microsoft Teams. So when you log in the next time, just like you always do, try to come on early in case your computer wants to download any temporary software or anything like that. Just kind of come on a little early. I don't know how that'll look on your individual PCs.
Looks just like this. Looks
Jeff,
just like this.
yes, it'll
But I
be
mean, I don't
exactly
know if
like,
if the computer's going to recognize it and just go right to it, or
no, Jeff, there
Okay.
won't be any downloading anything. They'll go just like they do with WebEx. They'll
okay,
click on it. It'll take them right to the team screen.
Do we
okay.
have to have a
Okay, good.
Microsoft account?
Why don't you send
You
us
don't
an
have to.
email, Jeffrey, with all that?
What's that?
Send an email with all that. Can you do that?
Well, I've been sending one every time, but I've been sending it about a week ahead of time, and so I will do that. I send that to you, but if you don't get it, and you just like this morning, a couple of you didn't have it, just let me know and I'll send it. I'll shoot it out there again. But yes, I will do that.
Okay.
Yeah, all we have to do, it says down there, join meeting. You just click on meeting. You just click on that. Mine comes up in green.
Mhm.
And then over here, I think you have to click again where it says join or whatever. And then you're connected. It's very simple, very easy.
And
So
while I'm
that's
we've
thinking about
enjoyed
it,
it.
Was the 14th or the 20, what was it? The second one, the 7th
The
and
26th, the 7th and the
the
26th.
7th and the 26th, they'll both be on Microsoft Teams.
okay.
And they'll be scheduled from 9 to noon. And
Probably from now on, we'll be doing teams. They're moving us off the WebEx.
yeah,
Having us do
we'll be doing
teams.
Teams. So, and by the way, I want to mention again, that was Laura Costin that just chimed in to tell us that. She is one of the ones here that sort of works behind the scenes. So we really appreciate the work that she and Dustin Barati does for us from that respect. She's the one that schedules all this stuff and sets it up. So we do want to acknowledge that there would be a huge problem if we didn't have people like her.
All right, are we ready to adjourn this meeting?
I'll make that motion.
I second it.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion was made by Frankie Lax and it was seconded. I think that was Curtis, wasn't it?
Yes.
And January
Brown.
30th.
And January. All right, I'm gonna give her a note down here too. Okay, I have a motion and a second to adjourn. I'm gonna call the roll. Curtis Brown,
Yes.
Dustin Madison, excuse me.
Here.
I'm sorry, I got that name backwards. Leroy Ferris,
Yes.
Frank Gaddis.
Yes, sorry.
Okay. We know Blaine's not with us. Angel Rodriguez,
Yes.
Donald Gregory,
Yes.
January Farrell,
Yes.
Frankie Lax.
Yes.
Okay, the committee meeting for certified trainers is adjourned as of 11:50 a.m. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Y'all
Good
later.
afternoon.
All right,
Have a good one.
bye.